Hello, little chatfish, and welcome to today's stream. It's me,
Your music play?
Kib. Just gonna set my gamepad
Kib.
over there because it's in my way. What?
Music, do you have a playing kid?
Yep, I got it.
Did you remember? Kid?
Oh, am I not streaming my screen to you? That's the one thing I did
No.
forget. One thing was forgotten.
You're so full of hate.
Listen,
Trust
chat.
me.
I spent a great deal of today talking about sex and reproduction lore. So,
Lore, because he wasn't doing it with a girl.
wow. Wow, oh my god, hurtful. So my brain has been thinking about cellular division for some reason. Alright, so there we go.
And fetoids.
Being like, is it a little Bobby or is that not a little Bobby? Alright, so let's see. So yeah, weird subject, I know, but you end up working on things that you would never really think would matter that much, but like, oh my god. Logistical lore is what I usually call this. Background information. So, today we're going to be talking about, you're fired, basically, and why it's good, and why we need this. Why we need firing people.
It's good, actually.
It's actually good.
By EA laying off Veilguard developers is good.
It's good, actually. And it actually is good, though.
I know, but it's the fucking tagline for all these shitty fucking sites.
In this particular case, this is good because to get right into it, right? This is the main crux of today's conversation. It's also going to be, I think, one of the shortest things. Because, honestly, it's one of those things that we talk about, and it happens, and fundamentally it changes a studio. Now, firing can be both good and bad, and it also extenuates more than just firing. And we'll talk about sabbaticals, and we'll also talk about people moving on with their lives or retiring, because this is all connected to basically family, and family is important, chat. In this case, a studio is a family, and so when you have a studio, you know, with a group of people and whatnot, it all makes up what a team is, right? So if you were to take a director or a writer and you were to shunt them off a project, look no further than examples like Avatar: The Last Airbender versus, you know, The Legend of Korra. The differences in writing is catastrophic, and this extenuates to the fact that one of the lead writers that departed the project and went on to go do other things, and the two writers that stayed behind didn't really know what to do with that project when you take somebody out of the picture. Now, those
guys...
Oh, go ahead.
Those guys specifically, they just want to do whatever they wanted to. So that's why we went from feudal era China, at least in aesthetic, to 1920s America.
Mm-hmm. Javish are just like, family. It is. A studio is a family. This, as somebody who is an indie dev and has worked with other developers too, studios are families. They are your team. You fight with them, you argue with them, and some of the most valued team members I have are the ones that push me the most, that confront me on certain issues or certain things. Not in a, you know, hostile way, but in a productive manner, like in Fish being very driven to push me to, like, let's get this done now. And it's like, okay, well, listen, you little shit, I gotta get this done first. But these kinds of things are incredibly important because they help to establish, like, you pushing forward, right? Without that person in the mix, certain things wouldn't develop a certain way. And in this particular case of Dragon Age Veilguard from Bioware, them firing all of the writers that were involved with this game is going to fundamentally change Bioware quite a bit. This is massive in terms of what it does. Now, there's still more issues underlying what's wrong with Bioware as a studio, no doubt about it. But this does mean that it is going to fundamentally change the writing. Now, whether that's for the better or for the worse, because it gets worse because they are even crappier writers, we're going to have to wait and see, right? They might just supplant these writers and blame these individual writers rather than the philosophy these writers had and held close to their heart, right?
Or they fired people that weren't responsible for it, because people that are responsible for it have a nepotistic position.
Yep. I mean, these writers probably were responsible, because if I had to guess, this is like EA's upper, right? Because Bioware is a subsidiary company, or a little underling, if you will, of EA, and so meaning that EA can go in and pluck things out. Usually, the publisher doesn't really want to get involved with the affairs of the studio too much, because micromanagement can actually be very unhealthy But in this particular case, this kind of micromanagement is essential because the studio itself is unfunctional. The game that was Dragon Age Veilguard is a disaster, to say nothing, to say the very least, honestly, right? It was a disaster. It was a embarrassment. It was a humiliation of not even talking about the lore, but the product itself. And so that was one of those things where it's like, okay, we got to redo this, we got to restructure this, we got to fix this. And the only logical thing to do is to fire people. That's just the reality. But the question is, the people who they fired is of interest, right? Because do you have the list of the actual individuals they fired?
Scroll down.
Yeah, because I think that's in this.
Actually, no, wait, that's the other one.
Oh, no, it's right here.
No,
That's just servitors, I think. Right? Or wait. Also confirming they've been gone. I think these are the people. Yeah, because they also worked on the Veilguard. But I wish it would tell me editor, a tester, a producer, a senior product manager, a systems designer, and a UX designer.
I think can you click on their names to see what exactly they did or their history?
7 credits on 7 games. This particular website's not the best.
It's not most useful.
Old Republic, Legacy of the Sith, 2022 on Windows. Okay, so that's important because the Old Republic's actually pretty good, but most of the modern content for it's actually pretty bad. But he did do Knights of the Fallen Empire, which I also argue is kind of bad. Editors for it. So he has quite the track record. Now, I would say the track record isn't particularly good, even looking at this, because... Yeah, but he's also an editor, so... Interesting. But yeah, so firing people, and these are just the people we know of, by the way. Now, odds are they're a greater deal, and the only reason why we know about these people is because there are people on other sites basically trying to track the people who work for Bioware who are now listing that they're available and looking for a job. Basically, job listings is what they're looking for and whatnot, and posting availabilities. So these are some pretty important people that are already on this list, which only makes me think, except for that tester. Testers are important, but usually testers, you can find a lot of them. A tester, analyst, and producer. Okay, so an analyst. Senior product manager. That is a very important role. It's a very... Systems designer is also incredibly important. UX designer is important. I mean, technically all these things are important, but it's like, okay. If they're gutting it this widespread, then I bet it's pretty rampant. We'll have to wait and see for more information on that. I am very curious, though, to see the extent of the amount of people that lost their jobs that worked on the Veilguard project. Because if we could actually get insider information on that, that would be very revealing. That would actually paint a very interesting picture. Especially, it would also tell us a very interesting perspective, because it would basically establish with us what EA thinks is the core crux of the issue. EA obviously is aware that there is something wrong, without a doubt, right? But EA is definitely of the opinion that these particular individuals needed to go. But yes, the firing, right? Back to topics. Talking about the firing as a whole. So, I think we can all kind of agree that Bioware itself needs to be cut down to size. Now, Bioware is not necessarily the only one at fault here. This is also EA as well. They're both guilty parties. I don't blame one more than the other in this particular case, because Bioware has also been incredibly inept and incompetent, dating as far back as Dragon Age 2 and Mass Effect 3. So, like, they've been doing this for a good decade now, because those games are well over a decade old at this point. So it's nothing new, per se, but it's not good either. Her LinkedIn profile quickly got scrubbed. What? Is there more information? Oh, the original team for The Witcher left CDPR because their beef with management. Yes, we'll talk about that in a second. Oh my god, I almost forgot about that. If you have subjects, by the way, chat, to add to the conversation, feel free. There are so many things kind of happening right now that I was like, okay, we're going to pick one and just try to stick with it. But back to the Bioware firing real quickly. So the Bioware firing is very important because it basically means the entire studio is going to change, right? Now, does this mean that it's going to get better? I think the quick answer here is no. It doesn't mean that at all. All we do know is that Bioware is doing so poorly that EA is basically starting to either eyeball, consider, or is already considering, or even maybe is making moves to actually pull the plug on the program and roll the studio or remnants of the studio into another umbrella. Because what I could totally see EA do in this case is shutter Bioware and then roll up some of the personnel that they want to keep into another studio to resume the Mass Effect project, right? A possibility. They could also be cutting it up just because it's not producing as much money and it's not justifying its own existence. They could be cutting it up also for a myriad of these things too, by the way. They could be cutting it up to basically try to gut the rot, so to speak. Because if you guys saw the Veilguard stream, this game has rot to the core. Not just with its story design, right? But its fundamental design. So we need to recap Veilguard a little bit real quickly. Veilguard has a horrific story. The story is rancid. Actually,
some of the
rancid.
Worst pandering we've ever seen in a game.
It's got rancid levels of pandering. It's very Reddit tier. The story doesn't take itself seriously. Much like many fantasy settings or science fiction settings nowadays, all of these settings no longer take themselves seriously and take themselves instead as jokes or satire. And because they take themselves as jokes and satire, these settings suck. That's the crux of why most settings suck. Like, the best Star Wars movies are the ones that took themselves seriously, and the worst ones are often the ones that tried to be like jokey or focus on selling to children, you know, or be fucking like memorabilia things like the fucking new trilogy. It's all the same detritus, right? And so with this, we kind of have a good picture as to the overall workings, right? Now, when it comes to Bioware, I don't think it's going to get better. To be really honest, I think that they got some rot to their core, and unless somebody inside Bioware, and this means inside Bioware, turns this around, we're gonna have to wait and see. We know this that there is other people that were actually against this inside Bioware because of a post made by the Mass Effect 4 director, who basically threw the Veilguard team under the bus by basically not directly attacking them, but immediately making statements about how he intends to not be like Veilguard and make the game more accurate to what Mass Effect was, and respecting its art direction and visuals aesthetics rather than what Veilguard had done to both its artistic direction. Because even artistically, Veilguard is a vast departure visually and visual design wise from its original counterparts, to the point where a lot of the armor and weapons and equipment of characters and whatnot look high fantasy. Whether if you were to compare it to Dragon Age Origins, its originator, they're a bit more grounded in terms of design. Yes, there's some flavor, obviously. It's still high fantasy technically, but the layers of how absurd the pauldrons are isn't as grotesque as it is in Veilguard, because Veilguard gets quite goofy with its overall visual design and its departure, not just with armor and weaponry, but also enemies. The Darkspawn being one of the massive ones. Visually, design-wise, they look more like ghouls or akin to ghouls and zombies than they look anything like the Darkspawn in the previous iteration, which again had a ghoulish nature to them, or I guess you could say, design-wise, but it was more orcish and brutish, wouldn't you say?
They were a lot more like the Tolkien style of orc than the D&D style orc, considering that the game was, you know, inspired by D&D and Tolkien.
Yep. So it had a
And
very
then
different route, yeah.
They had they also had the variation between them, like some of them being like dwarven in shape or like elven. Like there was a variety to them that showed that they were corruptions of what the characters were. You could see a human in the shape of a darkspawn,
or a dwarf, or, you know, one of the other races, because they had been warped and twisted and perverted into these monstrosities, right? Following similarly in, like you said, Tolkien's footsteps, where, you know, Tolkien, the concept of the orcs is that they are tortured and twisted elves, and the Uruk-hai, I think, were like hybrids, or like twisted men, if I remember right.
Uruk-hai are specifically the same process that was done to the not humans.
The
elves was done to humans.
Yep, and they were even more brutish and grotesque. So it follows a similar philosophy, which is actually rather interesting. Chatfish are lamenting the Darkspawn aesthetic. Yes, they were really, really bad in this. I can close my eyes.
They glow
and see
red.
They glow red. I mean, so we talked about that, right? And why it's important to fire these people. Because if you compare Dragon Age Origins and Dragon Age Veilguard and ignore the second Dragon Age game altogether, right? And the other one, Inquisition, because there's too much wrong with their development history to talk about, with its being in the wrong direction, being like, one was trying to be an MMO, one turned into an action game, and one's actually an RPG, right? Well, this one is still more like an action game than an RPG, but it also tries to be a bit more like an RPG than the second game. But it ultimately fails to do so. It makes the second game look better, honestly, which is funny. But
Second game, like it has qualities.
it has elements, yes. It just I remember not being very
Quality.
interested in it. It just felt kind of mid. Crub donates $2 and says, "Keep looking into Crub reproduction, Crub." No, I'm not. Thank you for the donation. Very generous. It was not the lore I was working on this morning. But yes, so that's one of the things that... Oh yeah, no, we just talked about visual design. Let's shift into game design, right? Because the game design, fundamentally, between Origins and Veilguard is fucking ridiculous. Veilguard has this mentality, like, where you have to be engaging with the player, not in a QTE level necessarily, but you have to be pressing like 1 billion buttons to kill something. You have to be pressing like 1 billion buttons to do anything. Moving from point A to point B involves of like shooting several different icons and then to open a door, or like pressing several different actions by running around to open a door to progress the level so you can get to the next story part. It's like a trial of, I guess you could say, time wasting things that interrupt the overall gameplay. Tedium, yes. There is so much tedium in between each quest and each zone that you have to engage with in Veilguard before you may proceed with a story arc or a quest line. And it is so pointless and so tedious that it just drags the game out with this repetitive gameplay loop that is incredibly forgettable and bad. Contrast that to the relatively simplistic gameplay of Dragon Age Origins. Now, Dragon Age Origins, by no stretch of the imagination, is perfect, okay? It is a turn-based game forced into real time, which has a horrific plethora of game design flaws and issues there. However, in spite of those dated issues with its own experimental real-time combat system, it's just way better designed. It's more cohesive. Moving from one point on the map to another point of map to engage in a quest might incur a random encounter, but that random encounter does not deviate from the core gameplay loop that drastically. Whereas in Veilguard, you would go from like fighting in Origins, you'd go to fighting like a couple of dudes, there'd be like a dialogue thing, and then you'd solve like a thing, maybe get a character, an item or something from traveling on the road. Okay, simple enough, right? And that's more or less the gameplay loop of the entire game. The issue is with Veilguard is that it also is like, okay, you go to a place, talk to people, fight a bunch of dudes, and then go to a place, talk to a dude, fight a bunch of dudes, and that's just the game in a nutshell. And there's actually nothing wrong with that loop, necessarily, if you focus on developing the gameplay loop, right? To making the combat more intricate, the enemies more dynamic. They sort of do this, but in the laziest of ways. And then hold on 1 second. And this is what they do to vary it between each of the zones, right? Because we talked about how Origins uses that same base combat and dialogue introduction to basically do its stuff. That's how it does it. It's just combat, then dialogue, combat, then dialogue. And that's how Origins did it. However, in Veilguard, it's not combat, then dialogue, combat, then dialogue. It's combat, then dialogue, then traversal section, platforming section, puzzle section. And the puzzles are incredibly simple, by the way. But, and then, like, tedium section where you have to open or shoot a bunch of, like, bubbles and follow them around a map to open a doorway to do combat section and then dialogue. That chunk of tedium interspersed throughout the game in between each quest is incredibly grating. It was aggravating to play this game because that fucking tedium interrupted the flow of the game. The game was bad from the get-go, and even ignoring that, even if that wasn't in this game, the dialogue, the combat core loop is bad because it's just a sort of crappy hack and slash. Tova says the game has a crisis of identity in a way, but I would say it's more like they're so worried that you're going to get bored with the core gameplay loop because it's shallow, and it is. As a hack and slash, it's very shallow. As somebody who likes hack and slashes, it's bad. And so it tries desperately to cover this and mask this by introducing a bunch of little mini games that are poorly developed and just make the game feel more shallow overall. There, my rant is complete. Squealy Beely.
I want to remind you of the corridor sections where you just shoot a crystal so you can progress inches at a time.
Yes, that's what I was talking about. The tedium section where you have to shoot a crystal. Oh my god, I haven't even talked about that specific thing. There's so many complaints I have with the overall fundamental design process of Veilguard. But yes, that is actually one where you have to run around, shoot crystals, and then follow to the next crystal, shoot a crystal, and then follow, shoot a crystal. And it's just the dumbest fucking tedious shit ever. And you do that for like a good 4 minutes because it's just in a big circle. And then you circle back to a door so you can go talk to a dude and then progress and then do combat and progress the game. It's fucking awful. And the reason why this ties back into firing and the importance of firing people is that the people who came up with this game do not have any place in the games industry whatsoever. Their thinking isn't thinking outside the box. There's nothing new or particularly revolutionary here. They're not even recycling old tropes and polishing them, right? Because what we need in the industry, what we need the AAA to start doing is AAA needs to not make mediocre Marvel-based like movies in terms of games, right? And what I mean by that is like Marvel will shit out a bunch of shit movies, or Star Wars will shit out a bunch of shit TV shows that are just there to be mindless watch garbage. It doesn't provoke any interesting thoughts, or it doesn't advance any interesting mechanics or design philosophy or theory, or even pose any interesting moral questions as a game. The best games usually are doing something in this regard, even if they're doing it whimsically or comically, in the case of Earth Defense Force, right? Or Helldivers. Both those games are slightly comedic in their nature, but they take themselves both seriously, and because they do that, they're better products as an end result. This game does not take itself seriously in the slightest. BioWare's game here, basically what it does is it basically treats itself as if it's like a Reddit tier joke, as if it's a Marvel movie based on Dragon Age. If I could guess a Disney making a movie about Dragon Age and what its story structure would be like, and what the game or what the story would have been like, it's Dragon Age Veilguard. It's tactless. It has no wit or charm. It's pointless humor that's incredibly dated already, right? This is the problem. We've talked about this before, because TV shows or movies have this problem. While we did watch the recent Deadpool, and I think we more or less enjoyed it, right? You'd say you had fun watching it, right? It's a fun
I thought it was
fun little thing.
decent, but I thought it was more just, I thought it was Reddit tier for most of it.
Some of the jokes are Reddit, yeah. But what's going to happen massively, right, with that kind of movie, Deadpool doesn't take itself seriously. And because it doesn't take itself seriously, it's doomed to be bad in time. It's going to be enjoyable now, but what's going to happen, and if you go back and watch the original Deadpool because of its dated political humor and climate, you're going to find it time capsuled to the point that it's going to be very unwatchable, even for those of you who watched it back then, and it's going to be even more unwatchable for younger generations. It will not be a timeless classic. This is something that will be forgotten as generations move on, and they'll have to reboot Deadpool again. Now, the thing is, that's fine, because I think more or less Marvel's intention here is to produce a movie and then simply make another movie later in a decade's time and then update its sense of humor to be modern for that era, right? Because they regurgitate a lot. Regurgitation rather than generation of new content, which is something that irks me on a fundamental level and a philosophical level, but that's just how it goes. Plague says, disagree, Kibon. Tom and Jerry doesn't take itself seriously, and it's good almost 100 years later. What are you talking about? Tom and Jerry is the exact epitome of taking yourself seriously for what you are. When you take yourself seriously, it doesn't mean you're not a comedy. Comedies can take themselves seriously too, but it takes itself seriously in what type of comedy it is. Instead of being lax with it and doing a lot of contemporary things, which age, of varying degrees, right? Now, you could argue that the propaganda cartoons, the ones that make fun of the Japanese and Germans, are, dated, and yes, they are, but they're funny because of how off the wall dated they are. Like, the big teeth on the Japanese guy with the glasses, with the massive glasses. It's so absurd that it enters a new level of funny. But Deadpool doesn't go that far. The only way you'd have to do that is you need to basically go 120% into absurd. And that's why those old propaganda cartoons age rather well, surprisingly, despite their, racial humor and stuff like that, because it's so outlandish and so goofy that you can't help but smile at it. And you can't help but enjoy it, even in today's world. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's good.
Deadpool is supposed to be a time capsule, though. That's the fun part. To look back upon and scoff, going, "Oh, what optimism to have that as a problem." No, it's
I
supposed
don't
to be a
believe
fourth
so.
wall breaking comedy based off Deadpool.
Yeah, I didn't get that at all. The world isn't going to get progressively worse. The world is going to continually, more or less, improve in a lot of ways, but also, take side steps. The thing is, what I find fascinating is people are always so hell bent on the concept of like, oh my god, the world's in such a terrible state. And it's like, okay, little bitch, let's go back a century and let's see what you say then. 1920, things are looking pretty good. You wait another decade, you're gonna be very goddamn sad. You're gonna be very, very sad. You go back another century, you go back 2 centuries. What's your quality of life like? Absolutely garbage. Your quality of life is going to be terrible. You're not going to want any of that. So I don't believe in the black pill thing. I think mankind, while we do have flaws, is genuinely an amazing species and race, and that we are marching towards a brighter tomorrow, and we always will be. We're too goddamn cool to not be, Welcome to Stream Hubbed Up. Let's see.
Super is escaping. Yes, we
got some supers to catch up on?
Yano
Let's take it.
donates 25 PLNs. Not sure how your experience was playing, but watching, due to the hub and not traveling on a map, world felt really tiny in VG. FS, IS Tenties.
You know what's funny? Veilguard probably is actually bigger than Dragon Age Origins is. But you are right, because without a map, you do not have context for the scope, scale, and size of a universe or a world, right? Like, for example, when you play a Star Wars game, or hell, the new Lego Star Wars, the Skywalker Saga, right? It's kind of fun. You can go to different planets and stuff. And it's kind of cool, right? It's got an open world thing. And it's got a galactic map. And so the galactic map makes it feel a lot bigger. Versus if you were to play the Lego Star Wars Complete Saga Edition, it doesn't have a galactic map and it only has those little episodes where you go to the different episodes and replay them, right, for story and free play. And while that is fun, it does feel substantially smaller, even though the quality of the content is obviously debatable and which you prefer and which you like more than the other. But yes, when you add a map to a world, you contextualize so much, right? Like, let's use some other setting I really like. Indiana Jones, the globe-trotting adventure, right, of archaeology and mystery. And it's always tied to, like, Christianity and Christian faith and mythos, which is really cool. And I really love the Indiana Jones setting as a whole. It's just a fun setting. It's a bit dark, but it's got its fun undertones. And why does it feel like a globe-trotting adventure? Well, literally, they use a map with a red line where they do the musical score from John Williams. The fucking, I forget the name of the theme, but either way, like the planes traveling from like Nepal to Tibet and then landing in China, and then they have a story event, and then it flies to like next place, and they don't even show them doing anything at these places. They fly to stop. But what it gives you the feeling of before they change the scene and environment, you take away that scene where they travel from the movie and like watch an edit of it, it will feel bad without it. It's like playing Halo without its music. When you take away the music from Halo, the game just feels kind of like a mid to average shooter, which is what the game really is. But the music composition score from Martin O'Donnell is so fantastic. It's Christian and Gregorian like choir and stuff like that they went for this biblical sort of like science fiction setting. Really, really, it's weird that we're talking about the Bible a lot. I normally don't do that. This is the most I've ever done in my life.
Western culture, so I'd assume that.
But yeah, Western culture. But it changes the theme, right? And so, like, imagine, right? Now, close your little Chatfishian eyes for just but a moment. Now imagine Martin O'Donnell doesn't work on Halo anymore. Now imagine what the music score sounds like. Can you? Do you know what it sounds like?
I can't hear anything.
Can't hear nothing. Oh, speaking of not hearing anything. Good point.
You need to stop
I forgot to set it on repeat.
That's always nice to say.
But yes, the big thing is that without that music, you don't have that atmosphere, right? Compare Medieval 1, Medieval 2, Rome 1, and Shogun 2 and Shogun 1, whatever, to compare the music of those games to like Attila, Three Kingdoms, or Total War Warhammer. The difference is massive. So much so that the overall like tones and skill is just a complete different vision altogether. Like, these things are vastly different, right? And when you have these vastly different things, what you do is you create very different games. And the people that were working on Dragon Age, that work for Bioware, are so vastly different than the people that work for Bioware now. Or the people that worked back then, I'm sorry, because I already said my brain. Is that basically you get a situation in which the game itself is so vastly different because the people themselves are different. And they're different because they, didn't respect the work that came before. They didn't learn from those people. And often many of the people that originally worked on the original project migrated out of the studio long ago. Long ago. Either retired, or they quit, or they were fired, or let go, or whatever. And the new people that were brought on had no respect for what those first people built. And because they have no respect or understanding for what was built, they do not care about upholding it. They rather would, ride on the coattails of it. This doesn't always happen, by the way. There are cases where this is not the case. These cases usually are very rare, but they do happen. I'm going to tell you some weird ones, and these are going to probably baffle you a little bit. So Empire Total War was made by Creative Assembly, and it's not very good, right? But Empire Total War for mobile and Apple or iPhones or iPads or whatever, Empire Total War for your phone is a better Empire Total War than the base Empire Total War. Save for the control scheme, obviously. Did you know that? Did you know that?
Did you know?
It has more mechanics, more features, more functionalities, and restored things than the other game had. Than the PC release has. How does that make you feel? That makes me angry, honestly. But it's one of those things where it's like, yes, Feral Interactive, a porting game company, and if you look at the people who work at Feral Interactive, by the way, the porting game company, what do they look like? Just average, middle-aged white dudes who are just, having a good time making games and trying to port these games to your mobile device to the best of their abilities. They have ported, and why this matters, by the way, why this is important is because it's the individuals that matter the most. Feral Interactive has ported Tropico to your phone. Feral Interactive has ported Company of Heroes to your phone. Feral Interactive has ported pretty much Rome Total War, Medieval 2 Total War, and now Empire Total War to your phone. And usually when they do this, there is some sort of improvements to these games versus the original releases, especially for Empire in comparison. That, and while the games are still fundamentally flawed, the fact that you have a porting company, like a little company called Feral Interactive doing that, is impressive. Feral Interactive also remastered Rome Total War. Feral Interactive has a better understanding of what Total War is than Creative Assembly does. Because Feral Interactive's only work has been on porting the good games, and because they have a better understanding of what was good, they actually understand more about Total War than Creative Assembly does, because they're working on the games that knew what Total War was about to begin with. That is so cataclysmic, by the way. I can't quite get over how mind-blowing what I just said is in terms of just like the fact of that, like how heavy-hearted. The company, Creative Assembly, the guys that made Total War, know less about Total War than a porting game company. The porting game company, Feral Interactive, to their credit, would probably make better Total War games if given the resources and personnel than Creative Assembly would. Sega, Feral Interactive would make better Total Wars if you would just give them all the resources and get rid of Creative Assembly. And if I was Sega, I would do that. I would gut Creative Assembly, liquidate its resources, and take whatever good there was and transfer it under the command of Feral Interactive. But obviously we want Feral Interactive to get some more practice with making Total Wars, so give them something easy like making remaster for Medieval 2, but building on top of it and adding like 2 campaigns so they get some working room to build new mechanics and start adding more to the game. Once they get that warmed up and revved up their engines, then launch them. Launch them with their first big budget title. The team will be motivated. The team will have a successful, easy game under their belt. They'll have inspiration and they'll have fire in their soul. I guarantee you that whatever they make, even if it's flawed, will be a gem. All you need to do is put faith in the right people. This is why firing people is such an important thing. Because, yeah, EA fired a bunch of people at Bioware. It's the first step, but it's also a little step. That's why when we're talking about this subject, we're not talking too much about the firing itself, because the firing is merely a step in the right direction. To go the rest of the way requires a great deal more. And that's the real issue. Will they actually do what they need to do to make this work, or will they just take a step in the right direction and hope that magically that will solve the problem? Now, even if they go out of their way, right? Because you could be like, well, they could go and get the original devs back. EA does have the money to probably entice many of the original team members to reassemble, and many of them will probably by now feel very nostalgic and have a warm feeling and will feel some elation to working on this project they once did before, right? However, people change. And even though that team was disbanded, because that team was disbanded, all those people changed. So even getting them back together and getting the gang back together, so to speak, the band back together, so to speak, does not necessitate that will be a good product. It just means that you have people who did know what they were doing back then and did have an idea, but they may not have it anymore. This is why when you're making a trilogy or you're making a game series, why are the trilogies so good? Ask yourself that, chat. Why is the Lord of the Rings trilogy so good? Why is the Star Wars trilogy so good? Why is the Halo trilogy so good? Why are these trilogies? What's with trilogy? Well, it's not trilogy that makes them good, by the way. They are good because they had momentum. When a studio gets in momentum, right? When they made Lord of the Rings, they made them simultaneously. And that's a big reason why Lord of the Rings is so fucking amazing. The movies, Peter Jackson films. They were made simultaneously, and that really played a massive role in making them good. And even though The Hobbit is incredibly flawed and has a lot of bad parts, it's not as terrible as it could have been because they were made at the same time. Because, again, when you make things back to back, you have momentum. When you take a break or when you take a hiatus from something, that's not just like a brief 5 months or 4 month break or whatever, but it's like, a year or 5 years, or hell, some of these games a decade before they try to bring them back. That's a massive amount of time that has passed. People change, people retire, people die. And when that happens, when you try to get this team back together, what you're going to have something very, very different. And that's why I think when it comes to Dragon Age, the only way to really fix this is to really establish and really research what Dragon Age was. What was Dragon Age? That's a good question. Is Dragon Age Inquisition? When you think about it, chat, right now, when you think about Dragon Age Inquisition, or not Dragon Age Inquisition, beg your pardon. When you think about Dragon Age as a franchise, there we go. What do you think about? Go ahead and just type it. Do you think about Origins? Do you think about Dragon Age 2? Or do you think about Dragon Age Inquisition? Because we're not going to include Veilguard in this, because we're talking about, what you think about, as if we're making Dragon Age 4 right now. We're making our own Veilguard in this particular example. Baffy says 97% of devs that work on new Battlefield haven't worked on the Battlefield title before. Yes, that's also a massive problem. Go ahead, Squealy.
But we'll read that afterwards. But Dragon Age is a really wonky series because it all depends on where you start with it. It's either you think of it as an RPG series, like with Origin, or you think of it as a action game with 2, because 2's not really an RPG anymore. Mm-hmm. And there are people that like 2, and there are people that much prefer 1. Then you have what came after that, which is just flop after flop, being fucking Inquisition and then Veilguard. 2 both very woke and very bad games. And people even consider 2 to be a bad game as well, so it becomes a question of, was it even really a series worth continuing in the first place?
It does raise. That's why I'm asking this question. You got to the meat of it right away. When you look at chat, let's see what we see. Oh wait, no. First we'll read the super, then we'll see.
Yeah.
Vulpes donates 100 generous euros and says, I'm a sucker for a good soundtrack, and I'm willing to buy it if it is available as DLC on Steam. For example, today's soundtrack mostly seems copied and uninspired slop. Hashtag Chatfish order for Palacard, and the rest for Rapier's choice. Thank you for the donation. Very generous. That means 30 goes towards... Excuse me.
Towards the Chatfish, yes.
Cops are returning again. But, yeah.
Cough drops.
So let's get back into the subject. And thank you for your very generous donation. When it comes to answering your question, yes, soundtracks were really important. That's why when I hired Robert Renato to be our composer, I specifically looked for a composer who was able to do things in very interesting ways. Like if you heard the music for our game for the Nafir or the Astrians, they're fundamentally different. And you also heard like the Celeste theme music for Lost, or if you've heard some of the stuff I have, which you guys haven't seen, the flexibility is what really Robert excels at, and that is what defines that. And that's why, you know, it's important, because before I had a composer that was okay, like he's not bad, he's actually really good, but he could only really do a couple things. And he could do those couple things really well, but lack of variety for like atmospheric tracks, for mood setting, for horror, for sad areas, for happy moments, for cultural battles and stuff like that, like all that important stuff, right? Now, back to the previous point, where we're talking about what do you guys think Dragon Age is? Many of you, almost all of you, pretty much just said Origins. And the reason why I say almost all of you is because I did not see a single one of you say Dragon Age 2 at all. I don't think I saw anywhere. Go ahead and like type that if you like Dragon Age 2 more than Origins. But I haven't seen a single one of you. And that goes back to Squealy's point. Yeah. What is Dragon Age? They forgot really quickly what Dragon Age was. And because they did that, that's why it quickly fell apart. Dragon Age as a franchise never really had its foundation because the story for the first game was so self-contained that it just sort of ended. And then they just started a new character story. Unlike Mass Effect, where Mass Effect was more back-to-back with how it felt narratively, because you were continuing Shepard's journey to basically fight the Reapers, right? And so it's like, okay, this has a better story structure and a better narrative and a better focus, and it's also more in line with itself. Yes, the game did shift more to an action game as time went on over an RPG. The first one being the better RPG part, but even as an RPG it's kind of weak, but it is the better RPG, more RPG themed part, right? The same goes for Origins, but Origins took a vast departure very quickly. And when it did that with 2, it immediately set the tone to be vastly different. Now, Inquisition is hard to really count because Inquisition was meant to be an MMO and ultimately got canceled. So, and then re-rolled into a sequel, basically. And so that's why it just sort of feels like it's just all over the place. And so when you get to Dragon Age 4, aka Veilguard, you get to a point where a lot of these people are looking at the franchise and they're like, well, it's all these kind of things in the mainline series, because this is the mainline series. It's not like a Halo spinoff like Halo Wars was, where it's an RTS, right? It's a part of the mainline series. And like, well, technically they established right away, since the second one, that they were being drastic in their interpretations. And so Dragon Age was sort of set up from its very beginning to fail as a franchise. Because it's going to fail because they cannot commit to picking something, right? This is what happened to Dawn of War. Dawn of War had this exact same problem. Dawn of War 1 releases and is very much a base building RTS with squad combat focused and like large scale battles, which was really, really cool. Dragon Age 2. Dawn of War 2 launches, and Dawn of War 2 is more squad based and more based off company heroes and less of Dawn of War. In fact, it has more in common with Dawn of War 2, Company of Heroes, than it does with Dawn of War 1 and its respective expansions. Massively so. And then you get to Dawn of War 3, where it's again been a long time since they produced another game, and it's very different, right? And this is from the studio Relic Entertainment. It's like a hybridization of both in a bad way and also a MOBA. And so it's like it has no actual identity anymore. And they don't really, it's not a return to form. There's like no real base building. Like you can build buildings, but not on the level you could in like Dawn of War 1. And so it's just kind of awkward. And it has the lane system from Dawn of War 2, because Dawn of War 2 is more of a MOBA and has more in common with a MOBA than it does with its original game. And so it's like, okay, that's interesting. You take that same studio, Relic Entertainment, and you look at Company Heroes 1, and Company Heroes 2, and Company Heroes 3, and despite these 3 games being debatable in which one you prefer, I personally prefer 1, but you can always state which one you prefer. 2 is fun, but 3 is just bad. But even though 3 is bad, and I think 3 sucks, and I hate 3, 3 is still more of a Company Heroes game than Dawn of War 3 was a Dawn of War game. And that's because it was consistent in its design choices. It never deviated to the point where it stopped being about basically Company of Heroes. It didn't do what Dawn of War did and drastically depart and become like randomly a fucking, a weird MOBA style squad-based shooter or something else. And so that's why it's just like all over the place, And that created some serious problems. I'm sorry, I'm just recalibrating something. Goofy things happen. Goofy things!
Calibrating, Shepard.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's that. Just annoying. Like 2 to a certain degree, but some of the changes made from Origins to 2 was not to my liking. Yep. Because there's a vast departure, right? Mass Effect is again the same thing, not only narratively, but game design-wise. It stayed consistent with itself and maintained this consistency to the point where it's constantly innovating and building on top of itself. You want to take a series of games that isn't actually narratively similar, but actually does the same philosophy? Look no further than Command & Conquer, and follow the trail from Tiberium Dawn all the way to like Generals, or even, Tib Wars and stuff like that. All these games, relatively speaking, more or less stay consistent with the overall designs of what the franchise has established, but different flavors and different directions with different features for certain ones of them, right? But usually they're expanding and they're iterative, meaning that they're building on top of a foundation. And so because they do that, that's why the series is viewed very positively, because it's like, oh wow, they just, every time they just kept improving, tightening controls, adding new mechanics and features that built on top of the last game. So there again, you have another franchise that does the same thing, but does so well. And that's the big difference, chat. That's the really big difference. When you stay consistent with yourself, when you stay true to yourself and your design, and you stay faithful to the previous games, because when a game is established, you're setting a precedent. It's the same when you write lore, right? Like, a great example of this is the Avatar series. It's such a great example because it's such a quick betrayal of itself. It establishes really quickly that benders have these powers, and that this is how these benders work, and that this is how, all this stuff works mechanically and law in the universe. And it respects that for the first season for the most part, right? For the Last Airbender series. Then the Legend of Korra series comes out, and it completely disregards all the rules that were established previously by basically just retconning or revising things and changing how things work to the point where it's like, well, in the previous years they do like, some, I can't remember all the story beats, but they do like different things to learn how to do their powers, but instead, like, literally the fucking little child doesn't have to learn anything. Korra literally knows how to waterbend instantly and do fire and whatever.
She already understands the basics of firebending, earthbending, and waterbending, despite being 2 years old.
Yep, didn't even have to learn them. And so because of that, it just really just makes the whole thing ugly. Because it takes what the first thing established, the first product, and then pisses all over it. This is a betrayal of design. When you set up a setting, you have to follow it through. This happens again, by the way, with Command & Conquer Tiberium Wars. Now, Tiberium Wars is a continuation of Command & Conquer. It's the third one in the Tiberium storyline. But Tiberium Dawn and Tiberium Sun establish something very quickly. Tiberium is a resource from outer space that is basically manifested on Earth, and it's basically like a magical resource but also life form that spreads and mutates things to the point where, as they build on the story, it's revealed that the planet is no longer breathable anymore. Earth is becoming terraformed by this organism, this Tiberium. And so, okay, that's really interesting. It's terraforming, creating new Tiberium-based life forms instead of carbon, and so you have new entities being born of this, and it's changing the very fabric of the world. And that's the tone it sets, a very dark, sort of apocalyptic terraformer. Really, really cool. Like the movie Evolution if it got out of control, I think that's the name of the movie. Where it's like there's a organism that spreads and it creates a ecosphere underground, and they have to contain it, otherwise it'll like terraform like the earth itself and make it uninhabitable for the native species. And so that's really cool. And then in the third game, Tiberium Wars, they don't adhere to any of this, which is interesting because this is one of the few cases recorded where we have a lore Bible. Most lore Bibles in creation are not known, lost, or destroyed. But this particular lore Bible survived. It's actually public, if I remember right. And if you read the Tiberium lore Bible, or for the Tiberian Sun game, it basically tells us in the lore Bible that the intention of Tiberium is to be like this terraforming essence and energy, whatnot. And that's how the organism works and basically spreads and changes the world. But then you play Tiberium Wars, and it's more like a lattice structure, like a crystal, in the sense that not just like a regular crystal, but as in it turns the entire planet into a crystal. And that just like really changes the fundamental principle of being a terraformer to being, let's turn the planet into a crystal instead so that we can just harvest the crystal. Because the Scrin is the third party, and the Scrin planted the Tiberium on Earth to basically terraform it, right? So they can inhabit it, is the theory, right? And so in the future game, when it turns it into a giant ball of crystal so that they can harvest it for the resources for the interstellar empire, that doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? Why would you pick a planet that already has organisms and developed civilized life forms on it that are capable of fighting back to terraform that, or not terraform, but turn that into a giant crystal to harvest, when you could just take any desolate rock on the planet, or not the planet, in the universe, asteroid, and asteroid belts alone have more resources than our entire planet, by the way.
Just go check out the fucking literally asteroid belt we have in our solar system.
Yes, there's more resources in that belt than there is in the entirety of Earth. Like, it's insane. And so you could just basically seed them with Tiberium and then just turn them into crystals and harvest them. And you'd have more resources. Why would you terraform a planet so far, or, well, seed a planet with Tiberium so far away just to send an invasion force that they're going to possibly lose to? It just doesn't make any sense, right? It's stupid. You could even be like, well, maybe they did it because that way they could use this bio-weapon thing to wipe out the native species. That's also stupid. You'd be better off flinging a giant asteroid at them to kill them. Like, you're just inventing a convoluted fucking process to just kill these people when there's an easier solution. If the goal is to wipe out this civilization because it's a threat, then the easiest solution is to send an asteroid so big that even if they fire nukes at it, they can't do anything to it. For hell, fling a fucking gas giant at them.
It could work.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, what are we gonna do? Shoot at the gas giant? Scream at it? Pretty much. It's nonsensical. And the reason why I make this comparison is because this is what happens when you don't adhere to the principles of what was laid out before. You need to respect the original creation, because if you don't respect that creation, you're not going to understand what it is, and you're going to have sentences like, that's not how the Force works. And while you're listening to that, you're going to be like, yeah, that isn't. Glenn Dark donates $2 and says, but what if the aliens are assholes? Well, they should be really smart about it, because it's really dumb for them to do it that way. Like, go ahead,
what if adding life to Tiberium makes it more tasty? That's why.
Oh my god, fucking Christ.
Good guy, that's
Glow in the Dark donates $5 says, Kibbs, I'm sorry. DEI is out, so cat traps have to go. OnlyFans still exists. In all seriousness, are you hopeful for the future of video games now? I always have been. I've never not been hopeful for video games. I think the only person who's ever been that way. You can really wind back the clock. Yeah, I got points where I'm glum, but I know things are going to get better. And I've already told this 1,000 times, and I feel like I'm repeating myself like a mantra. But like I said back in like 2012 and before then even, like the era of like games like declining is going to pass. Hell, even before like I realized about wokeism like in 2013 and 14 becoming a problem in games. Even then, it was like, okay, this is obviously a leftover remnant of the Cold War. It's going to be probably a decade or so to work its way out of the system. And as it's working its way out of the system, I'm sitting here in my chair, I'm like, yeah, about right. A little bit. It's going to take a little longer, but it's already working its way out. It's nothing new. So, no, I've never not been optimistic for games in general, because the gaming industry has never been better. It has never been better than it is now. Now, what you could argue is that Yes, games that we liked like Dragon Age or Command and Conquer aren't around anymore. That is true. Genres like the RTS genre have had their golden age, and they're not in a golden age anymore. That is also true. That we can say. But gaming as an industry has never been better than it is now. And every year, generally speaking, has been improving across the board. This is indisputable. Indisputable. Because now we have more people be able to make games than ever before. Whereas before, only people that had the money and the financing of like major publishers could produce the games they wanted. We now live in an age, a golden age. And all that's going to happen as this continues to develop and as the indie sphere continues to develop over the next decade is AAAs will lose their throne and more or less be supplanted by new AAAs. And the new AAAs will repeat the mistakes of the previous ones, but then again, they will just be supplanted by new ones. AA publishers, usually. You already see this with Hooded Horse appearing. Nothing new, nothing... It's honestly pretty predictable. I mean, all you guys need to do to basically reach, I think, the same conclusion I do is just stop like working on stuff or playing games and just sit down for like an hour and think about it, and you'll probably come to the same exact conclusion. Especially when you start looking at games as a whole. Games have more soul now than they ever did in the past. And it's funny to say that. The difference is that there are more games as a whole than ever before. Period. The one fundamental difference with this that you could possibly dispute is that AAA games and titles that you may have personal feelings towards, like Call of Duty or like Battlefield or something like that, some big budget titles from AAAs, those don't have soul anymore. That is indisputable as well. And that's always been the fundamental principle of my overall outlook on the industry. Yes, the AAAs have lost a lot of soul, but to be honest, that was always going to happen. It's always going to... The minute you bring on investors, what's the first thing that's going to happen, chat? They're going to prioritize... What are they going to prioritize? Money! Are they going to prioritize making games better and making games we want to play? No! They're not! They're really not going to do that. They're going to be making fucking whatever the hell sells the most. That is what AAAs are going to do. So RTSs naturally were always going to become a AA thing. That was just going to happen. Now, there are still some AAA RTS companies out there. And that's the biggest one, is the... let's go through my brain. Total War's kind of decline. Age of Empires. The Age of Empires franchise is massive. And it's actually continuing to do better and better as time goes on. Which is weird because it's actually their older games that are doing better. That's fascinating. But their older games are superior to the older versions of themselves, so they're modernized. They're technically new games. Like Age of Empires 2 Definitive isn't really the old game, especially comparatively if you actually play the damn thing. It's more of like Age of Empires 2 2020's edition, I guess, or something like that. That's how I would process that. But yeah. Oh, sorry, I gotta stretch a little. But yeah. The big thing is games have more soul now than ever before, and honestly, games are better as a whole. We have games that we would never have gotten from AAAs thanks to the indies and the indie sphere. And I do see some people saying stuff like, what happens if indies become poisoned by money? Yeah, they already are. Actually, let me educate the chatfishies for a moment. So basically, right as the indie sphere was developing, it already was a disaster at the same time. People probably don't remember this, but I do. But Unity asset flips were one of the mid stage of that. But before then, it was Kickstarter scams and Kickstarter disappointments, like Starbound. Holy fuck, that was a fucking letdown. Planetary Annihilation. Yep. Fuck me, that was bad. Like, it was. There's nothing new in that regard. That you can't use generalizations. You can't say that the Oasis will be poisoned when there's no such thing as poisoning. It's individual studios. When we think about studios or companies or publishers, you cannot generalize them too much in most regards. What you can do with the publishers, you can generalize overall doctrine, right? Doctrine is to make money. So what are they going to do? They're going to do something that's going to make money. So they're going to follow popular money-making conventions or popular money-making trends and stuff like that. So, sort of like the hack and slash or action more orientated evolution of Final Fantasy, or the increase in battle royales, or the MOBA craze, or even before then the MMO craze. Like nothing new is happening. I always have to educate people with this, but like nothing new is happening, if that's what you're worried about. The same shit that was happening when Atari was around is happening now. It's happening. It's cyclical, and it's easy to forget these things that happened before because it's very quick to just think about here and now and only remember favorably the things that came before. Like, I'll throw something out here that's going to make you little chatfish smile. Medieval 2. There you go. Medieval 2 is going to make a lot of you smile. Halo.
I like Medieval 2. I like Halo. Wow.
Old school Warcraft, StarCraft, these old titles and stuff like that. A lot of you the little chatfish got little smiley smiles now. You remember these things, but do you remember the bad games? Do you remember Earth 2160? No. I hope you don't. Do you remember Fire Warrior? I do, and I know you do too. But
Gibbs, you have to remember, a lot of people love Fire Warrior. It's their favorite game ever.
But that's what I mean. It's a
unappreciated gem.
The rose-tinted effect of the past is so poisonous that it blinds people to being able to see what is here and now, what is good before you. Right now, before you sits a sea, a vast ocean of new titles. Every day there's something new to look forward to. Every week, every month, there's something new and interesting that comes out. But do you know about it? Do I know about it? Fuck no. More games release every day now than they ever did in the past. I think on like a month, more games released in a month than they did when the gaming industry started for like a decade. For like a decade. The amount of games produced is astronomical. Now, granted, the quality varies massively, right? From little crappy title to little personal project thing to little thing for school project to, big budget to little budget to crowdsource to kickstarted, There's so many. But yeah, that's what I mean. Honestly, I think what we have to realize is that, yes, this is good that the firing is happening in Bioware. It's good. It's a good thing because these people need to be kicked out of the industry. They don't understand what the industry makes it good, just like a lot of these AA's and other things, right? I like how we go from the grand division, right, to galactic galaxy brain thinking, to talking about an individual little thing. Shut up, Darva! I'll take it as a personal attack. No, you won't. You don't get to. I decide what you can and can't take as attacks. What? Dictatorial.
I get to decide.
Do you remember Uber Soldier? No, I don't even know what that is. I don't even know who you are. Age of Empires 2 is just amazing now. And the new campaigns coming out to the game these days have a lot of quality and mechanics compared to the original campaigns, at least in my opinion. You're right. Honestly, you're absolutely right. Age of Empires 2 Definitive, I played it not that long ago. And I'm sitting on it and I'm like, holy shit. Age of Empires 2, when I first played it, was like not my particular cup of tea, but Age of Empires 2 Definitive is like a completely different game than what Age of Empires 2 was. But it's iterative. It's expanded on it. It's built on it. Crazy Templar donates $20 and says, "Hi Kibbs, just thought of another video game to fund. OG Avatar game. Oh no. That game was actually kind of fun, actually."
Oh wait, we need a DS one?
No, the PC one. I have the PC box for the OG Avatar game. It had no right to be good, but it was. It's a bit repetitive. It was fun. I remember enjoying it. Playing as the RDA is so much fun. # Avatar. Thank you for your generous donation. Yes. Yeah, Avatar was one of those weird games where you could play as the blue people, and that was neat and all, or you could play as the humans and use the human vehicles and weapons to kill the aliens.
That Avatar.
And that game was really cool. That was a really cool concept. Movie games, I tell ya, chat. A lot of people like to dismiss them as really bad, but there are a lot of bad movie games. No, tie-in movie games are really bad. They earned a reputation for a reason, but they're often some forgotten gems, like the Revenge of the Sith movie game, the Attack of the Clones movie game. There are so many out there. The Phantom Menace game, where Obi-Wan commits wanton acts of murder on the PlayStation 1 for no reason, because he can become a murdering psychopath when you play the game. For some reason, they let you do that. For some reason, there are a lot of things when it comes to movie tie-in games where they're actually good. Or, goddamn, the Lord of the Rings movie license games. Holy shit, they're all gems, and even the ones that are kind of mid, they're just kind of mid. Like, what was it, Third Age or whatever? And that's only because it's JRPG combat, and I'm not super big in that. The PSP Tactics Lord of the Rings game, holy fuck, chat. It's fucking amazing. It's actually really good. Lord of the Rings Conquest, it's Star Wars Battlefront, but Lord of the Rings. Battle for Middle-earth, made by the Command & Conquer devs, kick ass. The actual movie games like Two Towers or Return of the King, Return of the King's got fucking 2 players hack and slash, beat 'em up, where you can play as the different characters and redo stages and like get power-ups, levels, and combos. Fuck, those games are good. And they're still good today. So many good things. That's why I will not let you guys be sad and doom and gloom, because I know you need to be filled with hope and wonder, Chatfish.
But we're doomer fish. Doom, doom, doom.
There are so many good games, chat. Too many good games. There are more good games. How do I put this? I've played so many good games that I think I'm the closest. I'm one of the few people in here that can actually complain about there being not a lot of good games to play. Because yeah, they release on a relatively slow rate. But the amount of good games I have, hours-wise, is probably enough to fill up like several months of playtime to get through. Right? That's pretty good. And occasionally when we get another new one, like the Indiana Jones Great Circle game, which is a game you should buy for $20, no more than that, is actually really good. It's actually really good. The Indiana Jones Great Circle game, I cannot sing high enough praises for, because it's not like amazing, but it's just good. It's a good movie game. It's funny because it proved to me that dead basically IPs, or what I would consider dead IPs because the actors are dead or whatever, can actually live on in a video game format. Indiana Jones' story can live on when Harrison Ford is a Skelly Bro in the box. Like, it can continue on. And there's no reason it can't. The reality is, so long as the content is good, right? Because that's what matters most. When it comes to games, you can keep making a game. You can keep making a story. There's no such thing as fucking fatigue. Shut the fuck up with this fatigue shit. People didn't have World War II game fatigue. What people actually had was bad game fatigue. Because it got lazy. Games sold themselves purely on the fucking looks. And then that happened to the modern shooter craze after that. And then the zombie craze after that. I'm never going to be sick of a zombie game. Zombie games are fucking awesome when they're done right. Like Project Zomboid. Oh my god. Or Left 4 Dead. When a zombie game is done right, it hits so goddamn good. When a zombie game is done bad, yeah, it's bad. No one is sick of Star Wars. No one is sick of Warhammer. What we're sick of, or yeah, what we're actually sick of, is bad games. And who can blame us? Who can blame any of you? You should be sick of bad games. You do not need to endure them, right? When I'm talking about games and the fact that gaming is better than it could have been, that's true. But when I'm talking about, like, oh, I would really like a good Star Wars movie, well, that's not going to happen. It's not gonna... there is limits to, what to be. And I really would like Star Wars to be good again, but it's not. Just like I would like Lord of the Rings content to be good again, but it's not as well. I would like these things to be good again. We still get good things, but I would really like it if there was something Lord of the Rings based that was good. And that regard, yes, things have slipped there. But that's because the people who could possess these IPs have so much money to fucking waste that they can sit there and attrition themselves to death on their own dumb fucking retarded decisions as they throw themselves off a cliff, slowly wasting millions of dollars. But granted, they have millions more to waste, so they're going to be doing it for a goddamn while now, aren't they?
Like it's a problem.
Oh, fucking A. I can blame... No, you can't, Jam. No! The things games that I have laying around, Conquest, War of the Ring. I have never tried that one. Battle for Middle-earth 2. You should definitely play all 3 of them. Yeah, level 3 of them. Yeah, the Battle for Middle-earth trilogy is great. You want to know what's another fucking fun little game? The Hobbit. The Hobbit platformer game. That's fucking awesome. Has no right to be as good as it is. Solid platformer. But yes, trends. Trends people do get sick of, right? But yeah, this all ties back into Bioware firing people. And here's why. When we get bad games, when we get bad things, what we should see is the people that produce these things should either A, learn from their mistakes, because I'm not beyond forgiveness. I think everyone deserves a chance. We can all learn from our mistakes, right? But if they continue to fuck up, then it's probably best that they move on with their lives and go make something else. You're clearly not meant to be making these games. When I looked at the track record of that editor alone, the projects he was involved with, Jesus Christ. None of those things narratively had any good stories. And so it's like, you really should probably consider switching careers. The only reason why you even are in the industry is probably due to nepotism, if I had to guess. Because you're friends with somebody, or because you have all these games under your belt. That's another problem with the industry, right? Once people have games under their belt, that's, you know, oh, I've got a game under my belt. Well, now that's a big deal. And it is. I don't have a game under my belt. I would really like there to be at least one there, and I'm working on that one.
You got a tabletop under your belt. Really?
Yeah, we got the beta. Once released, it'll be fully under our belt. The first tabletop, and then the second, and the third, and then the fourth. But yeah. It's all about building up yourself, right? And making the quality of your work good. The issue is, this is a mentality that I saw when working with people in the industry and working with high up people. So one of the big processes in the industry, especially from learning from the Green Light Summit, is a lot of it boils down to like, oh my God, like I've worked on this game, and like I'm gonna work on so many of these games, I just want to work on it, so I get like I worked on this, and like that's cute and all, but like when a lot of these things are mid or average or okay or good, and they're not like, man, that's like Star Wars Battlefront over there, man, that's like fucking like the OG CODs, or even the first Modern Warfare trilogy, like that's good stuff, you know, like it's legendary level game, it's gonna be remembered forever. You worked on, you know, Bioware. Yay. Now granted, that studio went to go make Battalion Wars, and so they did redeem themselves. This is why forgiveness is important. That studio did make Battalion Wars and could make games. They just really, really sucked at first-person shooters. And I'm glad they didn't die. You know why? Because them not dying gave us Battalion Wars.
Do I have to remind you of the RoboCop game, Kibs? How those guys made the Terminator game that you played a while back.
They are getting better, but the issue is it's so bad. I just don't want to play it.
Their games are really bad, but they're like slowly getting better is the funny part.
They are improving, and so that's good. But they really need to do much better on their improvements from title to title. And they really need to redesign their game design philosophy as a whole. Because the whole like open world section thing is bad. If like when you make an open world thing for your game, you need to do something mechanically. You know why the Mad Max game was fun? I never beat that game, but you know why it was fun? Because the open world section was empty. But you're like, yeah, that was bad for the Elder Scrolls game. Why are you praising it there? Well, you see, unlike the Elder Scrolls game where I hold W down and do fucking nothing but drool as I waddle across the landscape.
You got a car.
In this particular, yes, Squealy, you get a car. Thank you for getting to my point faster than I wanted to. I wanted to segue there because I like to dance around the subject and wiggle over to it.
Yes.
I have to
Very
lead
fun point that way.
I like to lead my chatfish around. Like, this is like a tour, okay? I'm taking the little fish on a tour. And they're looking at all the sights, and Squealy just, you know, punted them into the fucking restaurant. Now they're eating cheeseburgers over there.
When we want cheeseburgers, you're wasting your goddamn time.
Gosh darn it, chatfish. But yes, that's the big thing. The fucking Mad Max game, the driving around. Oh my gosh. That driving mechanic helped make the open world actually fun to engage with. So if you're going to have a big open world, make the open world part of the gameplay. Make it part of the gameplay. Like, why is Assassin's Creed kind of fun, right? Like, I enjoyed, like, Revelations and Brotherhood and stuff. Why were those fun for me? Because literally traversing the map in an open world sandbox is a part of the gameplay. You climb around stuff, you get to explore things and see things, and that's actually really cool and really fun. That's good. You're integrating the open world sandbox into the gameplay. The reason why I have such a negative connotation to so many open world sandbox games is that they don't really serve a lot of the gameplay, right? It makes me annoyed. Like, what I really would like is that if you could have combat encounters take place in certain areas, it engages more, right? And this is why things like, if we talk about modern games and where you see open world sandboxes do better, Helldivers 2 is an easy choice because, well, there's game mechanics for almost every section. Every section of the environment is meant to be part of a battlescape. And so you could be battling on that cliff face over there. You could be battling on that rock over there. The battles are running battles, so they take place over the entire map. So you end up using the entire environment to that, whether you're fighting in a little jungle or a little group of trees or out in an open clearing. You know, you're fighting all over the goddamn place, and the battle is chaotic as hell.
I think what I want to point out, by the way, with specifically Helldivers, every minigame in this game is the exact same. Like they all use the exact same method of playing it.
Yep, it's a dance game.
So it's a dance game, yeah. But like, you never feel like you're doing some other random shit just so you can do a call in, you know?
They don't bloat the mechanics. You're absolutely right. And so remember when we talked about Veil Riders and traversing from section to section and having those random different things, like you gotta pop red bubbles here, you gotta solve a puzzle to open that door, you gotta like do this convoluted fucking little gay sex scene to fucking open this door, and it's like, oh my god, please kill me, please kill me. Like, that is what I'm talking about, absolutely through and through right there. When you add all these pointless tedium things and then none of them feel like they fit into the overall game design, it just isn't good. Why is Helldivers' simple up, down, left, right, up, down thing good? You know why that's good? Because it's fast. You also have to learn it, and so it's also there to create tension. It's actually designed in such a way so cleverly that it's actually designed specifically to make you get tense about it. Being like, okay, I need to call in somebody. Up, right, down, 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 or whatever the fuck. Or no, wait, that's hell bomb.
I will say though that because of it, I do have unsteady hands, so when I'm doing that, it does become a point where I just can't do it. I can't do it.
Yep, and that's there to create moments of stress. It's like, oh wait, you need to calm down. So,
the game's not making me stressed out. I just have unsteady hand.
No, Squirrely breaks his little neck.
No.
But you have a horse in Skyrim that you can ride up a 90-degree wall.
You know what? The horse is really goddamn slow.
It's fucking bad. Like, it's not fun. Okay, let's compare the open world sandbox of no, this game has an open world sandbox to a degree because you technically can explore it, right? It's a bit more linear, right? A Veilguard. Let's compare that to Mad Max, right? Both of them try to make the exploration have gameplay, but one of them just focused on a car, and the other one focused on a bunch of mini games. One's significantly better than the other. The Mad Max game. The Mad Max game. Just in case I need to spell it out for you. The Mad Max game is better than this game. They're not even the same genre, but they tackle the same problem very differently. And so does Helldivers. Helldivers tackles this minigame problem as well, but it universalizes it, right? Let's use an example of this game and comparatively to bad design, right? Bioshock's pipe puzzles. They have no place in Bioshock. They don't feel like they belong there. They're just completely just weird and immersion breaking. Dumb. Stupid. Bad puzzle design. Mass Effect's puzzle design where you have to match like threes and stuff. Bad puzzle design. Wait, what is this? What is this? What are you making me do? What are you making? And they have variations of it where you gotta match items and then navigate down, and then you gotta like, oh my god, it's just retarded. And it's just like, why do they have these things?
So they can break up the gameplay because they know it's monotonous.
And there you can see BioWare establishing a trend to try to break up this is the crux of the issue, right? You shouldn't need mini games unless there's a reason to have them. If it adds something to the game and it makes the game a better product, and because that's what I don't want. I'm stressing myself out here because I'm like, why am I telling you guys this? I really should be telling like developers this. But yeah, when you play a game, you should be asking yourself, is this fun or not? Right? Does this add anything? And if you think about it and you lean back in your chair and like, no, this adds fucking nothing, then you probably should remove it. It's like a story.
Actually,
oh my god, story stuff
away
too,
from the game. You think about it.
Yes, because I'm working on lore for like a story video series, right? And I'm working on this lore video series right now, and I have this part I'm working on where it's about politics, and it's talking about the political factions of a certain nation, and they're arguing about a hearing that's taking place of an event that basically is reshaping and redefining how things are happening. And this is similar because this, you can compare and contrast what I'm writing now, even when I release it, when you guys see it, to like the Phantom Menace with them talking about the Trade Federation and the vote of no confidence in Chancellor Valorum, right? That was handled really poorly there. What I am attempting to do is make bureaucracy and politics interesting, right? Start laughing. But how you do this is incredibly important, right? How you position things, how you establish characters and motives, and only talking about things that matter, but not just matter, but also making an interested investment in these things. They need to be tethered and connected and written in ways that are like, okay, like the Trade Federation doing a thing, like, okay, we know they're doing a thing, we need a little bit more meat in that. And the problem is in the movie, they leave out so much pertinent details that is actually written, because the book covers them, that when you watch the movie, it's just like, oh my god, just a boring talk about trade, like taxes and levies and stuff, without really trying to show us the bigger picture that this is giving the Trade Federation a massive advantage, which puts them at odds with the Galactic Republic, because the Galactic Republic wants to basically give the other worlds of the closer to the rim more rights, because the Republic's power and authority wanes the further you get away from the core, and these big corporations have basically become tyrants out in these large areas of space. And that's what the story's trying to tell us. And the story does sort of tell it, but it tells it in a very uninteresting way. And so that's why people ragged on that part of the story, because the movie did such a piss poor job of handling it, right? They needed to rework it and make it more interesting. Because if you just say trade federation, taxes and stuff, and like a couple things, like your eyes are going to glaze over. You're just going to like, oh, I don't care.
Trade Federation gaming.
That's what you should be thinking. And you should ask narratively, you should ask gameplay-wise, you should be asking musically and compositionally, what does this add? You should always be asking the question for everything. This sounds like a lot of work, and that's because I'm going to be honest with you. Yes, it is completely. What I am asking you is to do your job. We're being paid to do this. That means every level should be designed, right? When you're playing a first-person shooter, when you enter a room and there's enemies in that first-person shooter room, whether it's Halo, whether it's Fear, whether it's whatever, right? Return to Castle Wolfenstein, whatever game, each level, each room, each enemy placement was planned. All of those encounters, whether you're playing like, Max Payne or whatever, all of those encounters, all those combat encounters, them pushing over a table there, them jumping behind that, the set pieces of Call of Duty, each one of these things is carefully and meticulously laid out to be a set piece, and a set piece for you to play in. Because you're playing a role of a character. You're role-playing, unironically. Just like, Abe! Bring up that ancient conversation.
RP!
But yes, that is entirely what the crux of the issue is. And a lot of these games feel like they don't really think about that. Like, I know Veilguard, they did this process, but it felt so formulaic when it came to encounters. There was like one encounter where we're running through a city, and it's like, we're going down a flight of steps, and there's just a random combat encounter there. And I just remember feeling this feeling as we're fighting these like mage dudes, where I'm like, but why? Like, why are we having an encounter here? Like, it's just like a weird, it's like there's steps, and then there's a street, and there's like a crossroad area where the street is, and we're having a fight here. And as I'm looking at this map, and as I'm thinking about this little road beneath these steps, I'm asking myself, but why? Like, what is interesting about this area visually or anything? And there's nothing interesting going on visually. Like, I'm frustrating myself. Like Dead Space. Dead Space has meticulously designed combat encounters, where they're all pre-scripted. Even if you know about them, they're gonna guaranteedly happen there. There's some randomosity to some of them in the remaster stuff. But like Dead Space 2, for example, there's gonna be a necromorph attack here. There's gonna be a quarantine thing when you try to get out of the hospital. But they make it interesting. Yeah, you're just in the hospital, but the rooms and the layout of the map is designed in an interesting way that it creates an interesting atmosphere. Narratively, it creates an interesting gameplay loop because of all the rooms and places to maneuver in. And so again, yet again, there's all of these things and factors playing into this designed room, right? Of its layout, places, the vents where monsters can come out of, and the weapon you have at your disposal at this point in the game, and what resources you have. There's a lot of stuff that went into the design of this first combat, like quarantine room. And when you think about it, you're like, wow, yeah, no, it's just a hospital lounge. But it's more than just a hospital lounge. That encounter is very memorable because it was so well designed. And so you can take a crossroads of a city street and make it interesting if you do something with it. But in Veilguard, they didn't. And most of the combat encounters in most of the places, when I close my eyes, I don't really think of the environment, even aesthetically. I just think of the monsters and how goofy they look, artistically, and the sort of somewhat annoying like combat system that was the hack and slash system in that game. That is the overall feeling that game creates. That's bad. That's really bad, right? Let's compare this to Bioware's combat encounters. I remember the tomb when you play as the elf start, where you have to go into that tomb and basically where the other elves are, or were, because they're dead now, obviously. And there's like spiders and stuff like that. And the game is fundamentally not that interesting mechanically, but I remember the encounter because each encounter, or the tower, the mage's tower, or literally the town where they've been all like corrupted and twisted, like all those encounters are memorable either for narrative reasons, either for artistic reasons, or for just their overall design, right? Sometimes it can be bad things like, oh god, that level is really fucking annoying, or something like that. But when it comes to it, there's usually something identifiable. Or when you're playing Mass Effect, I remember the level where you go to get Grunt. It's like a planet, a junkyard planet with all these debris. Or I remember Jacob's planet where his fucking father is, and how, there's a ship crash there and there's like a little jungle and whatnot. And I can remember these encounters in these zones because even though those games are relatively simplistic in their mechanics and combat systems, they're designed well, more or less. Because for the life of me, I cannot think of any of those encounters that were memorable, except for one. When I close my eyes, the first Dragon Age Veilguard encounter I can think of is that boss where I had to fight 2 dragons, and I only remember that because it was kind of annoying.
They made you fight him like multiple times, by the way. Yeah, you had to kill those dragons like 3 times, was it?
Yep. Because everything has to come in threes, right? This is also the everything has to come in threes policy. It becomes predictable. Games really should occasionally break this up carefully. I want to stress, because I have seen games do this. I'm like, what if it's got 6 phases? And it's like, what if I hang myself? What if I... You gotta be careful how many times you do something. But yes, the 3-part structure, all good things come in threes, is not necessarily fucking true. Okay, I'm telling you that right now, because all good things coming in threes did not happen there. In fact, it did not happen there at all. It's like Fire Warrior in that boss encounter where you have to go into that. There's 4 different rooms before you fight the boss. It's like all good things come in 5 parts, and it's like no, they don't. 5 is not a good number. It's odd. It's awkward.
Actually, I like 5.
Shut up! Don't talk to me. Harding's 1-hour-long quest with 0 payoff, meeting that character from Inquisition who turned into a statue. Oh my god! Don't bring up these silly things. Cheek Divers games should be the brave Chatfish entering the Bickering Bunch lair and battling Greyfish and Kivian minions level by level in order to reach the deep lair to claim Kib Cheeks. Florio, you're a little bit tired, you know that. Hugo Fugi's just exploding right now. Typical Chatfishian behavior. I look away for 5 seconds, you guys are goofing off. Ay, what are we going to do with you guys?
Beat him. You want to.
And yes, you're right, Decompresso. When it comes to games, when they say like a thing happens, you should really show it rather than tell it, right? Like, yes, his specific thing he's asking about, and Decompresso says, is we never really see why the embargo on the planet matters. We are told it's hurting them, and that's in regards to Helldivers when you use the station. That's absolutely true. You should see it do stuff. You should show, not necessarily tell. If you tell people lore, that's interesting, but that's boring. If you show them lore, they're gonna have a good time. This is why people that make lore videos are usually terrible storytellers, because they just show. They're shit at storytelling. When they write settings or when they write lore, usually, not always, I'm just using the term usually here, because there's a general reason why whenever I see like these lore channel people make like their own products or settings, they suck ass. Because they've gotten so much in the habit of telling people that they don't show people anything. I've had to lecture a fair few people on that.
I will say, by the way, that most lore channels are just reading a Wikipedia.
Yes, or they're just regurgitating things. A lore channel does not write lore, it regurgitates and spouts lore again. This is why it's incredibly important that when you write something, you show it. Hell, to be honest, I was borderline, I almost gaslit myself into doing the lore video thing. When I realized I was doing it, I stopped myself because I'm like, wait, no, don't tell, show. Like, it's like people who make lore videos, they don't really have creative bones usually. No offense intended, but genuinely the issue is that you're too influenced and inspired by something that you're either going to just make a Warhammer thing or a Star Wars thing. And almost universally, every person I've ever seen make a setting is too heavily influenced and too heavily inspired to be original. Fortunately, that's not always the case, because taking inspiration is not a bad thing, by the way. This needs to be clarified because it's incredibly important, especially for you younger writers out there. When it comes to writing, taking inspiration is a good thing, but there's a difference between taking inspiration and either borderline plagiarism or not actually understanding what makes something good, you know? It's like Grimdark as a setting, right? Grimdark is one of those settings where it's incredibly interesting, but it's interesting because of its mystery. And when you start to answer its mystery, you start to effectively take away elements of that setting. You do this over explanations and over explaining things to the point where you can actually just demystify a setting, and you end up with things like Halo with the Forums. Modern Halo lore is about as interesting as looking at a wall. Not even watching paint drying. Paint's already dried. That there's nothing new gonna happen. It's like it's just everything's laid out before you. It's already established. Nothing new and exciting is going to happen. Some things should never be told. Some things should remain a mystery. We can obviously show quite a bit, right? Because that's something that I've done with my own stuff and what I've seen other people in other settings do when they do it well. Like Tolkien did it, like for a while Star Wars used to do this, but then they fucked it up. Thanks, Disney. Because whenever there's like a mysticism aspect, I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Like, huh, what is that?
An unexplained, mysterious thing? Let's just explain it. And make it dumb.
Let's explain it. So, like, actually, it's the Force is female. It's like
it's a woman, actually. Yeah.
That explains why if it gets moody, it turns evil. Okay, everything makes sense. It's basically like, you know, that's why the Jedi don't want to get moody, because they get moody, they turn into, you know, women, aka Sith.
Yeah.
Just like, what?
Palpatine,
biggest woman in the galaxy, biggest woman, Grandma Palpatine, if you will. I'm just saying, there's a correlation here. Chapters are like,
Amy. Chef. Just...
Yep. Frederick says George started some of the over-explaining shit. Disney got it up to 110. Yes. This happened with the midichlorian thing. And this, again, once more, ties back into our little Veilguard, which I do want to move on past Veilguard. But this comes to an issue of when you start to over-explain things like the Quinari become lame. The Quinari stopped being interesting in Dragon Age the minute the Quinari got horns. It started to look goofy.
Because berserker bull people now.
It's like they're dumb. They're stupid. Like they didn't need to have horns to be unique or interesting. They were already...
Like Stan was already cool.
Yep. Stupid. Stupid will do stupid things. I swear to God, Chapros. I swear to fucking God. But you get what I'm saying. Annoying myself with this conversation because it's upsetting me. The topic. Why did they get horns? Retcon. That I don't. There's no other excuse. It's a retcon. It's like it's a negative retcon versus like I'll show you a positive retcon. A positive retcon is Star Trek when the Klingons go from the original Star Trek Klingons to having ridges and like weird like more like brutish looking like features and more rugged looking. That was a positive retcon because the original Klingons were just kind of like space Mongolians and they didn't really feel like they belonged, right? They felt a little awkward and out of place. Versus the Klingons got more distinction and personality when they actually changed. The Quinari, on the other hand, just became one-dimensional. Versus the Klingons actually are rather complicated with their society and their struggle with their own cultural problems and racial problems that they're actually enduring, which makes them interesting as a faction. Still a bit too one-dimensional in some regards, but that's sci-fi in general. In most sci-fi settings, usually a planet is just a location for a set, and that's about it. It's not actually big. Like, for example, a solar system in most settings doesn't have, thousands of ships and a personal defense fleet, because ours will by the time we have our stuff set up right. It's like every solar system in Star Wars is like, it maybe has like a military from like something. It's like, every fucking thing should have like a bajillion dudes. Like the standing army of the planet should be at least in the millions. If it's a well-populated planet, the very least. No, it's like, we have a security sort. Royal Naboo, we have a security force, and it's like maybe like a couple thousand strong is what it feels like. And I played the Battle for Naboo game, which expands this massively. But even then, it's still like, okay, like you could have done a little better. Like most planets are usually going to have some real military. No matter how demilitarized they get, even as a security force. It's just certain issues. They make fun of the original series and Deep Space Nine when they go back in time. Yes, they do. That's a funny episode because they specifically call back to it when Worf sees the other Klingons and the other guy's like, "Hey, like, we want to explain what the difference is? Why these guys look different than you?" And he's like, "We don't talk about that part of our history." And it's just like that's pretty much it, or something is what he says, and it's funny and it's like, okay, yep, because the writers acknowledge it as a retcon. Sometimes retcons are necessary. They are mistakes and failings in storytelling. That is just period. That's a period, chat. A retcon is a failure of storytelling, but it's okay because it means that you're willing to revise something if you break it, if you retcon something well. Retcons are necessary evils to fix mistakes. However, then there's Disney's retcons where they're bad. They're just bad, period. That's just not good, chat bros. Not good at all. If I remember correct, dragons were considered evil and connected to the Darkspawn, and the Quinari got horns and start worshipping dragons. Yes. That has to do with like the fallen one or whatever the fuck, the fallen lord or whatever. What's the name of the thing? Like that they worship the dragon thing?
I don't remember at all.
Fuck, I can't remember.
Let's see. Punari worshipping.
No, I don't think it's a Quinari. The Darkspawn have horns.
Darkspawn worshipping.
Chatfishies. That's dumb though. It's still retcon. I will not allow that archdemons.
They worship the old gods, which aren't they supposed to be? Isn't the archdemon supposed to be an old god?
The old
That's eventually
archdemons were
killing off the
dragons,
world.
but I don't remember. I think all dragons were archdemons. I don't think all dragons are archdemons necessarily, because I do know you fight random dragons occasionally in one of the Dragon Ages, and it's just a random fuck off dragon. But I think that was Inquisition. Why are you complaining about Mama Palpatine, the baddest bitch in the galaxy? I'm just saying, if the Force is female, then what that entails is not necessarily, I think, what they thought it was. B Squilly says archdemons are old gods. High dragons are different. Thank you for the explanation, little Beasley Quill. Now you're mine. Look at him. He's got a goofy profile picture. I bet it's a cat or something. Guessing. Dart in the dark.
Yes. Yeah, Archdemons got co-opted dragon.
Yeah,
Tiberius.
because I was pretty sure regular dragons are
'Cause
not necessarily the same.
You can fight normal dragons in the game. They're just chilling out in the setting in the certain areas.
That's true.
You just got a lot of free money with them too. Kill them. Because they're just D&D dragon. The
Excellent.
forces are black. I mean, racially diverse.
Wow, rude. But yeah, regardless, moving on from the firing. The firing overall is a good thing happening to the Bioware people. It's a step in the right direction, but it's only a step. And like with anything, we will investigate Mass Effect 5 as it slowly unveils itself to us, and we'll go case by case. I'm not going to put my optimism too high because there's a track record that's been set here, and it's not a particularly positive one. But, you know, it is what it is. What can I say? Except I'm not welcome. Sorry, Croy.
Yeah, you're a straight white male. Can't be welcomed at all.
I hated that Veilguard retconned the archdemons to be the ancient elves again. Oh my god, yeah. Dreadwolf, or I'm sorry, Veilguard was really bad because, yeah, it's like them gosh darn pesky elven gods. They're all the bad people. Honestly, the elven gods are responsible for everything. What it did is it made the entire universe feel tiny and minuscule. It's just not very good. On Veilguards itself to us, yeah, pretty much. I want to Veilguard myself from this fucking franchise. I'm kidding. I will always like Dragon Age Origins, but I do not care for Dragon Age Veilguard whatsoever. Ugh, gross. Get out of here, Games Radar.
I hate you.
So the next subject we have is also pretty interesting because it's well, not necessarily subject, but the next point we have to talk about. Baldur's Gate 3 dev slams EA's Bioware layoffs as short-term cost-saving measure that doesn't solve long-term problem. Like I've been saying again and again like a mantra, Larian Studios is fucking rancid. I hate Larian Studios, but I hate them for specific reasons. The big reason why I actually hate them isn't just because the game mechanics are bad and I hate them, but it's mostly due to the fact that these developers are the same developers that Japanese dev that made that stupid fucking Nier Automata knockoff, where he's like, I wanted to charge this price so that people would think AAA. Rancid thinking, industry-wise. Stellar Blade. Stellar Blade is a rancid game, not because of anything about boobas or ass or titties or anything. That's fine. It's rancid because its creator is rancid for saying that. That is unforgivable thinking right there. Like, genuinely, it genuinely pisses me off. You increase the rate of the game so that it matches AAA games because you want people to think that good quality comes from being expensive. Fuck you. You are everything wrong with the industry. Jesus Christ. I wonder if
that's why Dynasty Warriors is 70 now.
Yeah, this probably is. It's rancid thinking. It's anti-consumer. No, you does not make you a real game. What it makes you is it makes you a scumbag for scamming people out of $70 for what it should be $40. Video games should be $40. Period. They shouldn't even be $50. They shouldn't even have DLC. They should just have updates. You should only have to buy a game once. You shouldn't be paying for DLC. The only thing they should be ever doing, I guess, and you can call it DLC, like anything, would be like a supporters thing or whatever, or like an expansion pack thing. It's like, this is cosmetic.
Yeah, I was about that.
This is to support the studio, because if you like the game, I don't mind doing that for like indies and stuff. But I do not want to see AAAs doing that practice, because AAAs, you don't really get the luxury of doing this. You don't really deserve it. You're not really earning it with your mid titles.
I'm kind of okay with the old school expansions because they were literally just a whole new game that's added on top of, basically.
Yep, Red Alert 2, like Fury's Revenge, right? Now, again, it's still like, God, it really would have been nice if that was baked in the game, because I have my problem with Fury's Revenge. And I know that got me in hot water with some chatfishies not that long time ago. We're like, what? You don't like parts of your Revenge? Yeah, but Yuri's Revenge should have had a Yuri campaign.
I mean, specifically when I say expansion, I mean stuff like Brood War and Frozen Throne.
Yuri's Revenge is still good, though. I still put it on the positive, though. I'm just annoyed with parts of it. Like, it should have had that. Like, Firestorm should have had a Cabal faction at least, but they didn't give us that. I'm all for advocating more for the player, and more for the player, not at the cost of basically tanking the studio, but reasonably. You have the assets for these things, make them. You've already put them in the game, just make it playable.
Make them available.
Yeah, make it playable.
Players
Let
will
the
do
player
if you don't want.
make the player be able to engage with these things. And so that's my big thing.
Also allow modding support.
Yep.
Or just allow modding.
Well, okay, so this is a question we do need to address real quickly. So when it comes to modding, never fight modding is the argumentation I will use. I want to enable our game so that it can support modders if modders would like to mod our game. But our game is a linear RPG, so I imagine most of the mods will be like, you know, stat balances or new spells or things like that. That's what my imagination, maybe even some new enemies.
I fully expect to see Albine playing a nude mod.
If the people want to mod it with nudity or whatever, or add sex stuff to it, they can. I don't see an issue with modding. Modding is only additive. It's purely a good thing. But my issue comes from developers hard locking the games to basically make it so that it's not moddable. That is my actual issue. Developers do not need to go out of their way to make modding tools if they do not want to. However, developers shouldn't try to hard lock the code and hard code everything so that nobody can tamper with it. That's just dumb. And anti-piracy measures, here, as an anti-piracy agent and an actual expert, I actually am. I'm actually an expert. Oh my god, that's so cool. I can say that. I'm an expert. But yeah, as an anti-piracy expert, I can simply say that when it comes to anti-piracy stuff, there's a lot of things you can do to help with piracy for your game. The first method is to not put DRM in your game. That is the first major step to do that right there. Not put anything, any sort of anti-piracy measures into your game. Rather, hire an agency or hire an agent and have that agent go around cleaning up the web. But don't interfere with the actual product. I don't know why it's that hard. Why is it that hard?
It's easier to do it that way.
They don't care about the customer.
Mm-hmm.
They're the last concern.
Yeah. Also, making a game of reasonable price will help with piracy.
Yes, prices also help. Accessibility. Making sure that regional pricing is done well. Yes, and demos.
Demos, yep.
Demos are a standard practice that should well, they were almost a standard practice, but they should return. Demos are a
Thanks to Steam,
good
we're
thing.
seeing them come back.
And demos, okay, so I know there's going to be counter arguments towards this, but here's the thing, right? If you make a demo for your game and your demo is bad, that's your fault for being an idiot. That is not the fault of the consumers. You made a bad demo for your game, showing off your game in a slice of gameplay that was bad. And that's why like things like Spec Ops: The Line's flatlined. That was on the developers for fucking up the demo. They should have done a better job there. Showing off why the game is interesting, rather than, you know, not doing that at all.
What do you think about when devs make it so that the demo of the game is the best version of the game?
That is also disingenuous. Halo does this. Halo's best level in Halo 1, in my opinion, and you can fight me on the chat, bros, is Silent Cartographer. And the demo disc is Silent Cartographer.
The big one that comes to mind that did that was the Legendary game. People were livid when the game came out, when they played the full game, because the demo level is just so much better than the game. And I don't even remember if the demo level's even in the base game.
Which game?
Legendary.
Never heard of it. I don't even know what this is.
Don't think it did well.
Yeah.
Gonna use your restroom.
Okay. Good luck. You're gonna need it.
I'll make sure not to fall in.
But
Splash.
Specifically, the demo for it, I remember, had you fight like it had like it was a decent FPS with some mechanics to it, relatively linear map, but like the map felt decent. And then it ends with you fight a boss battle with a griffin with like a dynamic arena that gets destroyed as like you fight.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just kind of the actual game was just dog shit. Like enemies were it's like almost all the mechanics just were worse, basically.
Yeah, that's always an issue. When games do that, they're just, oh, it's bad. Yes, there are demos like that. Red Faction 2. Looking at you. Red Faction 2.
I've seen the E3 demo for the original Halo Wars.
Halo Wars.
I'm unfamiliar with that one.
Halo Wars killed Ensemble Studios. Halo Wars is an okay
I
little
figured
game,
it did.
but yeah.
I have there's a special place in my heart for Halo Wars. They're not good RTSs. They're not really good games, but I really like Halo, and that's why I like them. If they didn't have a Halo skin, I wouldn't give a shit about Halo Wars. And I think that's true for most people.
Yeah. E3 demo. Watch Dogs. Oh boy, we talked about that one before. But yes, Watch Dogs was definitely on that list of bad videos.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, okay, so back to my actual rant about fucking why I hate Larian Studios and they must burn to the ground. So Larian Studios
make PC games.
No, not just that. I mean, that's a part of the problem, but there's a fundamental issue. It's this thought process like Stellar Blades dev, where it's like, I want to charge more because that way I look like I'm AAA. And it's like, that's a terrible fucking mentality to have. It's fucking rabid, rancid, garbage, stupid, moron, idiot. How dare you think like that? That's so goddamn fucking anti-consumer. Oh, but Baldur's Gate 3 dev slams EA Bioware layoffs as short-term cost-saving measure. It doesn't solve a long-term problem. The thing is that retaining, one of the quotes, by the way, because it says right there, retaining that institutional knowledge is key. This is fucking rich. That institutional knowledge, the stuff I talk about on my stream regularly, it doesn't exist in Bioware.
It doesn't, because that's kind of not existing with most Western companies, since they just cycle through employees and they do contractors for the programming and assets. The only people who stay on throughout is usually, well, not even necessarily usually, but writers and the upper management are the people that sit there. Otherwise, they just cycle out new employees.
Yep. Well, I'm streaming Little Gunfox. But yes, one of the big problems with this line of thinking is that it's not a necessarily short-term cost-saving measure. It's a step in the right direction. Firing these people is a step in the right direction. It's a step. They need to start basically restructuring and reorganizing the studio. Now, this is like Halo Industries, right? The new Halo studio. It's just 343 rebranded. They didn't do what I just said. If you want to restructure things in Bioware to basically restore it to where it was, you need to do this. And this is what nobody understands. But no matter how many times, no matter how loud I am, no matter how many people hear me say it, they'll never get it. The thing you must do when you want to do this is you need to go back, look at why Dragon Age Origins or Mass Effect 1 or 2 was what they were, research how those studios did that, because that Bioware studio is a different Bioware than the Bioware now. The team needs to be mandated to research this, mandated to study this. Then they must also be mandated to not only play this game, but mandated to communicate with the community. And they must be mandated to read all the lore. They must be mandated, and I mean mandated, just like I do in my studio. Everyone plays the game. You're all going to play it. You're all going to read this lore document. I don't care. And I know some of you don't want to read the 50, 40 page document, but you have to read it. You are mandated. I don't care if you want to charge me the time or whatever for that, but you need to read this because you need to understand what it is we're making here. When we make the concept art for this thing here, you need to know exactly what we're making. People are paying big monies for you guys to work on this stuff, and we work our asses off to do this, so you're going to read it. Because we're going to deliver the best product we possibly can. In order to do this, everyone fights, nobody quits. Perfect quote from Starship Troopers. Everyone fights. A lot of good
quotes.
And that is one of our studio policies. Everyone does this. Everyone participates in the game design process because we all are in it together. Fortunately, my team is very on board with this, thank God. Some of them are a little bit iffy on the tabletop having to play it, but that doesn't matter. They have to play it anyways.
But they all have.
Yep.
So
even if they necessarily didn't want to, because it's
had to
important to
drag
know.
some kicking and screaming.
Like, as they're dragged. They'll be compensated for their time, but it's incredibly important that the team understands what it is we're building. I do not want to have an instance like Bethesda with that one quote from that one 3D model. What do you know what the game? Oh, did you know you guys worked on Skyrim? Yeah. Like, you know what Skyrim's about? No. What did you do on it? I just made pots and pans. It's like, I'm just gonna hang myself. No wonder why the universe and the art style and everything about it feels so stale and bland. Nothing was designed with a vision, with an identity, with a culture in mind. Terrible. Terrible. I hate that shit. That's why everything must be designed. Everything must be worked on. You need to be autistic about it. You need to design extra. You need to write more lore than will ever be used. Like, for example, if there's a derelict spacecraft and there's like monsters on board it, there needs to be a story of how that ship got that way. Even if the game is you just find this ship, right? The synopsis, you find the ship and you waddle on the ship and like, wow, it's a ship and your stuff on it. You have to write a story for it, right? And if you don't do that...
Even if the player doesn't see it.
Yep, even if the player doesn't see it. And that's what Dead Space did. Dead Space went above and beyond when it came to world building and storytelling and environmental storytelling because it wrote a complex narrative that was bigger, that told itself visually and narratively. That's why it is so popular and revered, even though it's a tiny little game. It's a great example of this, right? There's other games that do this. Tiberian Sun does this with its missions, where you can occasionally see wreckages and building ruins from the previous war. That's really good. Tiberium Wars, even though I didn't like parts of that, they still do that there too. You can see like worn out titans and like abandoned mammoths, like broken and cracked with Tiberium growing on them from the second Tiberium War. That's a really cool touch because it makes the world feel lived in and breathed in. Everything should be designed. Everything should be explained. Everything should have lore. Everything should be connected. Everything. Yes, game development time should quadruple. Games shouldn't take 6 years to make, or 3 years to make, I'm sorry. They should take like 9 years minimum to make. The reason why is I would rather get a really, really interesting game in a decade or in 2 decades that will last the test of time forever than a game that was shat out after 3 years of development and forgotten after 30 minutes of after playing it and lasting only enough to play a mid-afternoon. I still revisit Medieval 2 because it was well designed, right? But if Medieval 2 was truly designed even beyond that, I would probably revisit it even more than I do now. And so the more you invest into a product and into a game, the better quality is. That's why Creative Assembly fell. Creative Assembly adopted the Call of Duty approach to Total Wars, the Saga Total Wars. Basically, a Total War pumped out on a basically, bi-yearly or yearly basis almost. And it's like, this is rancid. They're smaller, more contained, and lack vision and scope. I want big. I want grandiose things. I don't want little, tiny, bite-sized experiences. I expect to get bite-sized experiences from indies. When I'm buying a little fucking indie thing, I'm buying a little slider burger. I'm just like, a little snack, you know? That's what that is. It's a little snack. I shouldn't look at things like Factorio and go like, God damn, that's like 1,000+ hours. And then some. And then look at AAA game and like, that's 8 hours. That's 8 hours.
It's like triple value. Triple the cost.
Triple the cost. Yeah, pretty much. This game has 1,000 hours of gameplay. This game has about 8 hours. Now, technically, gameplay loop-wise, the game is actually much shorter because its loop actually loops. It's just, it has a really satisfying loop. And that's why, again, if you focus on the loop of your game, it doesn't matter how repetitive it is, people will still play it. Because a satisfying gameplay loop, you won't even know it's repetitive until you played it to the point where you've gotten your money's worth of entertainment value, right? That's like Total War. Total War used to be that way where you could play a campaign and roam, and you would normally not paint the entire map because the gameplay loop would get repetitive. Painting the entire campaign map is more of a chore than anything else, and that's a failure of game design, by the way, because it should be interesting. You should want to play the game to the end of the campaign. That's a failure if you don't want to do it. Like, the only reason why I get to the end of Medieval 2 campaign isn't to paint the map, but it's because they added the bonus thing where you can go to America and beat the crap out of the Aztecs, which is just a really icing on the cake experience, you know? It's fun.
I like being the shit out of that head.
Like, is they just sacrificing people and getting beaten up?
Aztec Empire.
Also, Grifford gifts 2 memberships.
Blake also points out something rather interesting. Oh, thank you for the gift of memberships, by the way. Very generous.
And chat, this is the Compresso is in chat now. It's a good opportunity to try to green him.
Yep, now's your chance to snap that presso and clap his little cheeks.
And yeah, I already added his first one. Regular.
Yes. That's all.
Okay.
That's all. That's all.
Little presso. Just spurred
Actually,
out.
what has become of that game where you're gonna fight the Aztecs? We play as the conquistadors.
I don't know. What has
Because that
become of
blew up
game?
for a bit.
It blew up because of the
It might be
controversy.
canceled.
What?
But
Yeah.
yes.
Because you can't
But-
paint conquistadors as good guys at all, ever.
Except I'm pretty sure the devs were like, no, yeah, you can play as them.
They added it because popular demand.
Mm-hmm.
Swolet gives a membership. Gunfox gives 10 memberships. Thank you for the gift of
I've
memberships.
seen Gunfox in a while.
Oh my god, I thought he hit Decompressor for a second. Because Decompressor typed there, and I'm like, holy shit.
Nope.
Sadly, not yet, but soon, Chatfish, but soon. All these lurkers, indeed. They be lurking. They be lurking. All right. So, yes. Back to the point. A little bit of a tangent there. Baldur's Gate 3, Dev slams EA, Bioware layoffs. Yeah, okay. So, yes. Larian Studios is a moron. Larian Studios are morons. And it mostly boils down to the fact that, yeah, Blake is absolutely right. It does solve the problem of having bad writers. Because the problem is bad writers. Like, yeah, retaining institutional knowledge is important. And I talk about that almost religiously. But it's like, this guy doesn't even fucking know the half of it. The institutional knowledge preserving, what are you preserving? Wokeness? Is that what you're preserving? Is it from the Baldur's Gate 3 dev? So it probably is. So honestly, all these people need to be basically lined up on a wall and fired. Yeah, you thought I was going to say something else. But I didn't. So, wow.
Because you would have gotten screen taken down.
Big thinkies. Kibs. Why do you people always call me kids? It's Kibs. It's weird. If I would hit Decompresso, what would you say? If you hit Decompresso with a membership, you would win the prize. And we'd
Which
be
is quite
like,
a lot right now.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. Horlet. I don't know if you actually want those to go into anything, because you've been flip flopping between cookie and sandwich. So I just haven't been adding them to either.
Dang.
I
Unless
found the
stated.
game.
What?
Apparently the premise of that game is now that you're a local and you can choose to either fight with the Aztecs or join the conquistadors against them.
Okay, that's actually kind of cool. That's a better way of handling it than having 2 different starts, because that would double the development time.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's actually historically accurate. In fact, many of the natives actually ended up joining the Spanish because the Spanish rule was actually better than the Aztecs. Gunfox gives 10 memberships. Thank you for the gift of membership. Very generous.
It was also very much convenient because they had a higher place in the society afterwards. As the big guy on the block is now dead.
Big guy on the block is now dead. Yes. But yeah, that's what's really interesting about that. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, no Decompresso yet. The war for him continues. Gunfox
Greg,
has a
just-
chatfish, right?
Greg just picked where the funding does. Okay. Must mean he meant goes, but yeah.
I mean, the D is kind of close to the G. There's an F in between.
I will put $100 into Hands Reading Dracona's fan.
We're helping, chat.
This will be the year of the cookie, chat.
Harlot gives membership.
Elon Musk has given them.
Thank you for the gift of membership. Very generous.
You're chunky. You know that?
Why would
Chip
you
was
say
your
that to me?
So full
Oh,
of
good, you're talking about
chocolate
Chumba.
chip
Thank
chunks.
God.
He was also fat,
Chimichangas?
like morbidly obese.
Oh, what's the game called? It's called. It doesn't look like it's that high quality.
Post
It's
it.
called. I can just post the. Yeah, I'll just get the Steam link and post it in the chat.
Do it now or you'll die. He's like, I don't want to.
Darlings.
I did already.
You died already?
You're
I'll
chilling.
delete it. I'll delete it then. Hold on.
Okay, I got it. Wait, what? What do you mean delete it? I'm looking at it. It's any game by
I
Acumen
said
Games.
do it or.
Yeah, how many memberships
post
is
it.
Carla gifted? 2, 3, 4, 5.
So, the store page still advertises you fighting against the conquistadors, but the text on the right literally mentions that you can join them in liberating your people.
My people.
Looks like it's going to be an alright little indie title. It's a very novel concept, and I like the idea that you can... It has replay value if you can actually side with or against. Yep, the trailer is... Yeah, because they're going to have to rework things so that you can side with the Spanish later.
Mm-hmm.
So this trailer is just showing us the Aztec gameplay. The animations don't look terrible, but it's really going to boil down to... like I said, then that happened.
That just happened.
That just happened. I don't like his butt. It's too much butts available for viewing. I don't like it.
Can they put him towards a pocket fish? If you want to put him towards a pocket fish, sure. Just tell me where you want to put it. Which fun game.
But yeah, this is an example of a developer responding to things. Now, the big thing that's going to set this apart, by the way, is... Oh, I'm not logged into this account. Whoops. Make sure you just keep it in there because I'm going to have to wish list on my other thing. But anyway,
I wasn't gonna delete it.
when people criticize something, this is the big thing, right? And this is why. So one of the reasons why gaming hasn't improved as quickly as it should is actually entirely down to gamers. And I know that's going to be... Yeah, it actually is. So, for example, when Star Wars Battlefront did the microtransaction store and EA gutted and removed it and then started to support the game and do stuff to the game and basically adding stuff for free and not being a prick about it anymore, that was the time in which people should come back to the game and be like, yeah, this is what we want. This is better. Because it actually is better. And the issue is that people don't. And so then they just killed the project. And then they went on to go make the Battlefield 2042 game. And if I can be brutally honest with you, I wish 2042 was never made. And that Battlefront 2 EA said still support. Because it could have been, instead of being like an average to alright game, it could have been good. Great, even. But now it won't be. It's dead game. Dead games don't get development outside of modders. Say it. The plot device tiger. Yeah, pretty much.
The game might actually be dead, though.
Oh, this one?
No real news for a good while now.
I mean,
Who knows?
even if it isn't dead, like, they have to redo
Yeah.
A lot.
a lot. Because if they made the agreement that they were going to basically uplift this game to have the Aztecs or the Conquistadors
Given
as
how
playable,
the community hub is all people reading about the conquistadors are bad guys, you shouldn't be able to play as them. I'm gonna go with they've stated that because of popular demand you'll be able to.
Yep. That's why it's going to be always very, very interesting to see.
Polish. Don't see that often.
Polish. Hate them.
Yeah, Polish full audio. Game will be in English, Spanish, and Polish.
Where are the developers from?
Poland, probably. They're probably a European dev, I'd guess.
Probably.
COD Ghost community event dummy seems to be a good pick. Okay, I'll add you to that. I'll swirl it.
Just whoa, wait. He just looks at you.
Put a little pocket fish on it.
All right, back to subject. So next up, yeah. So the Baldur's Gate 3 thing, because everyone keeps pushing me off this subject before I can actually finish anything. Basically, the entire point is that he's just an idiot. Like, yeah, no, the people being fired need to be fired because they were bad at their fucking job. It doesn't it fixes a problem. The question is, it's a step in the right direction, but the next step is to actually now address the problem. You've removed the bad elements. Now you need to supplant the bad elements with good things that are going to turn things around in a better direction. And this is about picking the right director. It's about picking the right, basically people, the right writers, and basically assembling a team of gigachads to unfuck your reputation. All right, next up, we have is Helldunkers 2. Helldunkers 2 creative director is going to be going on a sabbatical. That's Johan Peilstedt, if I remember right. And yeah, honestly, this, in my opinion, is not actually good news in my eyes. It's not good. It's bad. And the reason why it's bad is because Peilstedt is an important figure. Yes, he's one person in the entire team. We do talk about that with Hideo Kojima, which we'll talk about in a second. But having him leave the studio, or basically take a sabbatical, when he's been helping to redirect it back on track, is a mistake. A little bit of a hiatus is fine, but the problem is the sabbatical is the word I have an issue with. Sabbatical means that you're taking a break from a project or work, but you may not come back. Not that you necessarily will not come back, but you may not come back. I mean, you might return. That's bad. Because if Peilstedt leaves, we don't really have a figure that has really uplifted themselves yet to be like, yeah, no, they know what they're doing. Johan Peilstedt very much understood the direction of where they needed to go, what they needed to do. And so taking a sabbatical is concerning, is what I would say. Now, if it was just a hiatus, I wouldn't have an issue with this, because odds are Johan has already basically implemented a lot of changes and features that are going to take the entire year for him to develop, for the studio to develop.
Yeah, he's gonna lead the next game when
Yep.
he comes back.
But I'm not sure if they should be departing this project, like fully into another project, unless this team really knows what they're doing. Because my only concern with that is before his course corrections, the team was very much off center with the direction of the game, in the sense that they were going the wrong way entirely. And so unless he really did hammer that home, and maybe he is confident about it, I'm just a little concerned because they just got back on track, on the right track, and now he's heading off. And my concern is that I'm hoping that Arrowhead Studios is competent, because if there is incompetence here, you're going to see the creep of bad ideas re-emerge again. And so sometimes when it comes to certain things, you need to have a constant head on, right? A constant person on this. But yeah, he's going to go be working on mostly the next Arrowhead game, which is probably the space game that they talked about. I would assume, because they teased that it was going to be a space game, didn't they? Yeah. About the Eagle pilots.
It's something about that. The Eagle pilots.
Yeah, so it's going to
That's
be
all I know.
maybe like a fighter-based game, which would be interesting because we've not gotten like a free space or like a Rogue Squadron-esque game in a million years. Because that would be what that gameplay would probably entail. Very interesting conceptually. But yeah, I'm not particularly happy with that news, mostly because it's like, god damn. But at the same time, burnout is a factor. But it's worth talking about because now we're going to have to keep an eye on Arrowhead and what they do with each patch. That doesn't mean go looking for like bad stuff, chat. It just means that just be mindful that, you know, if bad stuff does occur and the community starts to, you know, ignite a little bit, it might be good to fan the flames. And the reason why it's good to fan the flames is so that the fire is visible, so that way they send people to put the fire out by appeasing and shutting down the issue, right? It's like if the Helldivers movie trailer is bad when we see it, because we're going to be very interested in that. Because remember what happened with the Sonic trailer, right? The Sonic trailer is an example of your voices matter. It's an example of boycotting being bad for a change, which is interesting as a concept. Because I used to be more favorable to boycotting, but now as I've grown older, I think boycotting is more pointless. And I'm much more of the opinion that we should be engaged in conversation and never relenting. Because if you boycott, you relent the argument and you give up. You don't need to buy the product, by the way. All I'm saying is that you're participating in the conversation, because usually what happens with a lot of boycotting is that the people will just try to leave or try to get people to shift and leave out of the thing. Well, the issue is what you're doing is you're silencing the voices of the criticism that needs to be louder. And so criticism needs to be louder. The Sony is wanting their IP universe. Well, the thing is, a lot of games can technically build into franchise because they're bigger conceptually than they are, right? Helldivers is easily something that could have its own universe and IP. It should be a franchise. It's big enough, it's got enough stories in it, there's enough factions and interests and like different directions that are established in the universe that it has enough material to build and expand itself. But when it comes to certain things are like one note, you know? Like Dragon Age Origins would be an example of like a one-note story for that character, but the world could have been expanded further, and it did get expanded, just the gameplay and took it in the wrong direction, etc., etc. Oh, yeah. Helldivers 2 is so successful that Sony is turning it into a movie.
No.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure about. Yeah, because the big thing is that, like, if the movie fails, this is ultimately going to be the beginnings of the end of everything, right? I mean, that's all I have to say on that note, and we can move on to the next thing. Next thing we're going to talk about is also related to firing people, and we're going to talk about
smile.
Todd fucking Howard. Jano66 donates 10 Polish bucks, says Helldivers 3 PvE PlanetSide 2. Helldivers 3 PvE PlanetSide 2. PlanetSide 2 isn't PvE. Hashtag
No, he's saying games to be made.
Oh, the issue with that would be that the players would probably over min-max and absolutely curb stomp the PvE element, if that makes sense. Because never underestimate the autism of gamers and their capabilities, or humans in general, with enough free time. And knowing how PlanetSide 2 works, the players would over-optimize the fun out of it and absolutely destroy the game.
Like they did last time?
Yeah. Because that's what happened more or less to PlanetSide 2. Like, if you're not in the big outfits, you're irrelevant. And so what that would essentially do is make anyone playing the game feel pointless. And so you wouldn't really matter. Because the thing is, we have the meta game, which is the Galactic War, and then you have the little combat game, which is like run around, do stuff, and do missions and shit. That adds a lot of context, and that adds a lot of viability to why you feel like you're valued. Yeah, incrementally, you're, a decimal of 0.00000, right? Percentage of help. But in the actual battle itself, you were pivotal because that mission could not have been a success without you. You are the hero in a sense. That's why PV3 I just don't think is very, very good. Now back to the subject at hand. So, and thank you for your donation. Todd Howard is an example of firing and firing in effect. So when Todd Howard had people in the, Bethesda removed, the people that originally wanted Daggerfall to be more of a sandbox, or Elder Scrolls to be more of a sandbox, open world RPG simulator for a pen and paper adventure, when those people were removed, or those people are fired, or when they left, same difference, more or less, because their brains are being removed from the studio. When that fight is over, then what you get next is you get Oblivion and Skyrim. And you get this sort of more linear thinking, but more like set-piece crafted experiences instead. And so what you have is you have two different philosophies competing with one another, and when you fire somebody, What that effectively does is that removes that component entirely, which changes the direction of a game. This is why firing is incredibly important, both positively and negatively, because if you need to remove a negative element, you need to fire that negative element, which is shifting the game down the wrong direction. It's nothing personal, it's just literally trying to steer the ship. And sometimes, fundamentally and philosophically, some people are so drastically different in their thinking, this cannot be achieved. Morrowind, more or less, is the brainchild of Todd Howard, for the most part. It is what he envisioned, and it's what he considers his perfect work, or his best work, so to speak. One of his best works. And so that's rather interesting, because that means, and Morrowind's received, and I know by the community that likes Elder Scrolls, really like Todd Howard's actual products, because they like that more than they talk about Daggerfall. So you would never have gotten this game had that not occurred. This is why, again, firing matters. The next individual we're going to talk about is Hideo Kojima. In this particular case, it's a bit different. This is the director, more or less, for Metal Gear Solid. And when he was removed from being involved in that project and basically left and basically worked for Sony, that basically means that his vision will be gone. But that also means that his vision, when he worked for Sony, also revealed a lot of something else. It revealed something very different. By him being fired, it simply also revealed to us that he wasn't the only reason why Metal Gear Solid was good, because he would later go on to make that game that was not particularly well made, Death Stranding, which was a borderline disaster. That game is incredibly bad, and while it has nice ideas or experiments to it, it really goes to show and prove that maybe sometimes the individual removed loses something from the greater whole of the team, or had value of working with Konami and having restraints. Because sometimes restraints are what actually make a creator work, when they have restraints, meaning that they're not allowed to do whatever they want. They have to work within the guidelines of certain things. And because of this, they're not able to shift away so drastically as to lose the identity of the project. And so this is also what led to Kojima basically, making that Death Stranding thing. Because the thing is, he's both overloved and overhated, is what I would say. He's definitely, like, Metal Gear's, he's definitely an interesting individual. Because Metal Gear Solid is a series that definitely has earned its reputation. It's a bit goofy, it's a bit over the top, it's comical in points, but it's also cool at the same time. And that's a great deal in part due to him. He plays a great role in that game's production. And he's definitely a factor, right? Because after he left, they made a multiplayer game, and it really showed that how out of touch they were with the overall vision of what made Metal Gear. And so you have that factor as well, But that's what I mean when you fire somebody. This is an example of it being bad for both parties. It was bad for Metal Gear. It was bad for him as well. Because when he left, that was bad too, because you can see that when he was given a blank check with Death Stranding, what he made was nothing revolutionary or new, was forgettable, and has already been forgotten to the sands of time.
Didn't he also leave the company he created with that money?
Kojima Studios? That'd be funny because it's named after him.
I think he did. I'll look it up. But
you should.
He strikes me as someone who wants to make movies and is stuck making games.
Yes.
Because he is.
So the problem with Kojima is that he wants to direct movies and he doesn't want to really make video games, and this is where his arrogance slips in, and he's failure to be good at anything. Or not necessarily good at anything, because he is good at things. But his failure to realize his true potential. Yes, that's actually much better. That actually fits a lot better because that makes more sense. His failure to realize his true potential is to realize that, yes, you may want to make movies, so you want to make highly scripted linear game experiences. All right, more than acceptable and more than fine. Scripted and linear games are some of the best games ever made. But the issue is that because he wants to make a movie, he makes these long-winded cutscenes that are borderline like movies that last for fucking ever. And so instead of making an interactive piece of media that actually succeeds at being a video game, he fails to make a competent game and makes more of a interactive movie than an actual video game. Remember, you have to understand what medium you're working with. You're making a video game, not an art project. And this is why constraints actually helped him. I know more than likely he didn't want to make those things, and that's fair. I wouldn't want to make that kind of thing either. But at the same time, you have to work with the constraints you're given with, because sometimes harder challenges is what makes an artist do well. Another great example of this artist-wise would be Yoko Taro. Yoko Taro is a pained artist, an artist who's pretty miserable. And because he's pained and miserable, his work is good. And when you remove that pain and misery,
games get worse.
yeah, when you remove that pain and misery, that removes a great deal of what would be, the driving factor. Sometimes a pained artist is a better artist, and that's sad to say. Dash Attack has been a member for 7 months and says, some people are skeptical, but with the firings there may be hope for Mass Effect. Maybe. If they hire people that know what they are doing and not activists. This is true. The big thing is with the maybe factor of this is that, again, it extenuates exactly to what you said and what we said earlier, which basically is identical. It's the first step on the road to fixing the problem. The first step is firing the people that did the bad. Because basically, at this level, it's not just a whoopsie poopsie, it's a, oh my god, you tried to subvert the entire franchise, and you've created what we call a black stain. A black stain will never wash away. However, a black stain may be healed by simply just taking that stain and cutting it out and saying that it's a fluke, it's in its own universe, whatever, to placate the people that actually like the piece of shit. Whatever you need to say to do that, but basically remove it from canon. And be like, we're going to continue with the part where the game was good and the story was good and move on from there.
The thing people liked,
Okay, that was just a rumor. A widespread rumor I heard. He's not. Kojima Productions is still around and actively making games, apparently.
Yep, that'd be really dumb if they fucking...
Yeah, like, don't they still have to make Death Stranding 2?
They apparently are.
Yep. Maybe we'll have gameplay this time. Other than walking.
Doubt it.
Alright, next up we have is Peter Molyneux. Peter Molyneux and the firing of talented people versus otherwise. Oh my god. This is a fucking bit of a goddamn mess. So the problem with Peter Molyneux is twofold, right? Back when he worked for Bullfrog, there were other people in power that had some say, and that's why we had creations like Dungeon Keepers, Magic Carpet, and even the early Populous games.
I was gonna say, was he part of Populous at the beginning?
Populous is Bullfrog, right?
Yes, well, at least Populous at the beginning for sure, the last one.
Yeah.
Which was drastically different.
And so after he leaves Bullfrog, right, and then goes and forms Lionhead Studios or works on Lionhead Studio stuff, what happens is that he's obviously a guy with great ideas conceptually. He's got great outside the box thinking. However, he is incredibly incompetent. So one of his crux issues is that he needs to not have unlimited power. Firstly, he must be more of an advisor and should have an executive overwatching him, basically. Because the problem with him is that when he has power, he would come into a room and basically say like, oh, let's do this thing or X or Y and Z mechanic. And they'd be like, oh yeah, okay. And then he would leave, and then over the next week or month or so, he would be like, oh, but like, what if we had this mechanic? And so by constantly shifting directions again and again and again and again, it never, ever was able to solidify. No, this guy did not destroy Halo. This guy has nothing to do with Halo. This is the basically the creator and the idea guy behind Black and White and Fable. The two of his biggest named IPs he worked on. Also,
Imagine
like Goddess
a Halo game made by Peter Molyneux, though.
That would be like, here's a hand-holding mechanic with Cortana. I'd be like, what the fuck? You can hold a hand.
I'm sure a lot of people want to hold Cortana's hand, kid.
Actually, I'm pretty sure a lot of people would have liked something like
Oh my god, no! Peter Molyneux joins Halo Industries.
Halo Studios, actually.
Master Chief gets a dog. Also, him and Cortana have kids. It's like, oh my god.
Sure, a lot of people like that as well, actually.
They're part human, part hologram.
Oh my god. But yeah, Fable went horrible after he left. Fable was already kind of up and down when he was there. So the big problem is Fable was already a shit show, and the reason why it never stabilized, even 1, 2, or 3, because if you actually look at the gamer magazines talking about 1, 2, and 3, the promises of what those games were versus what we got is massive departures from the end result. There's a reason why people were super upset about it, and that's the crux of the issue, right? He constantly shifts his direction and his view, and by shifting it constantly, he doesn't let any idea develop fully. Rather, what he creates is a series of interesting concepts that are as shallow as a puddle. This is the problem with Black and White. This is the problem with Fable. Cool ideas, but they're shallow. You can have kids and marry and produce offspring, but it doesn't go anything beyond that. You don't do anything more than that. It's not like, you become your offspring and then you carry on their legacy, which would have been like a cool thing, right? The old hero, if you die, you play as the kid growing up, continuing on the journey of the father or mother or whatever. It's just really goofy.
Goofy goober. Goofy goober, yeah.
But yeah, that's the issue with Peter Molyneux. Randy Pitchford is an example of somebody who should be fired.
Randy Pitchford is somehow not been ousted as CEO of Gearbox, despite all of his major fuck-ups.
This man is terrible. For the studio he works for, and for the industry as a whole. He's just a negative element, and I have nothing to say that he has positively contributed about the industry that I can think of on the top of my head. He's the reason why, like, a game I was looking forward to is also trash. Colonial Marines, that's Pitchford's fault. If my memory is serving me correctly. Yeah, no. Randy Pitchford's bad. You have anything to say about it, Squealy? I've done enough rambling. It's your turn to take over.
On one part, he made Borderlands 2, which is my favorite game to play with my brother. But he also destroyed Colonial Marines in doing so. So I thought it's both really funny and really retarded what he did.
Colonial Marines were just outsourced to several different studios, wasn't it? Like,
Because of
didn't even
Pitchford.
actually touch it.
Because he took most of the money and then invested it in Borderlands 2 instead. That's why Sega sued him.
He also made a Borderlands pre-sequel and Borderlands 3, which are one of the worst games I've ever fucking played. At least story-wise. Gameplay is okay.
Yep. Because, yeah, chat, like, Sega commissioned this guy and his studio, Gearbox, to produce them for Sega, with their license, to produce them an Aliens Colonial Marines based game, because they knew it would sell like hotcakes, and they were finally like, yeah, we've got the tech now, we've got the ability, and it'll be like a 4-player co-op game, it'll be great, and like, you can set it in this like building, where it's gonna have this sort of like and procedural like story, where whoever survives or dies or whatever, and like things happen, it'll be cool, right? It'll have like a bit of emergence gameplay to it. And Pitchford took that concept and turned it into basically a linear shooter with no like exploration whatsoever, for the most part, where you just move from level and set to set like you would in a shooter, because it's cheaper to produce, then outsourced pretty much everything to other teams. And like half the features weren't working. It's not even the other studios that were outsourced to their fault. It's this fucker's fault. Honestly, Colonial Marines is such a disaster in the industry that it's honestly overlooked. It's an example of basically the AAA, basically, like, corruption, I guess you could say. Go ahead.
My favorite part with Colonial Marines is the aliens actually do have a pretty robust AI and actually do move and behave how you'd like expect the aliens to do. You don't see it in the game, because all of the code for the AI and why the AI was so broken in the game, it was a single letter typo in the code, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
That completely broke the AI system for the game.
Yep, because if you flip, if I remember right, there's a patch you have to download, and if you download it, the AI starts behaving better.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a flawed game, but the studios that worked on the game did try their damnedest. But bear in mind, they didn't get proper development resources. They weren't even given the money that Pitchford had basically received to work on this game. Pitchford had hogged all that money to work on Borderlands 2. It also is what allowed Borderlands 2 to be as robust as it is, right? and be one of the best Borderlands games in the entire franchise. It literally is like the one golden gem of that entire shit show.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a tragedy because it allowed for the creation of something good, but it cost something that everybody had been wanting for so long. And because it was bad, and because of its failure, we will never see something like it again. It was that bad.
I think the closest we got to a style of game like that is the Aliens Fireteam Elite game, which is okay.
It's just an extraction shooter. It's okay. The studio did a decent job working on that. It's fun. It's fun to do a run through that.
But it really does lack replayability, which the game's supposed to be replayable.
Yep, it's good for like a run once the blue moon. We can probably do it in October, and then grab the expansion and do a run through the game. It's a decent length game.
Never got the expansion. I heard from people who did that it was very mid at best.
Yeah, such is life. But yeah, the extraction shooter for Aliens wasn't bad. But yeah, the concept of an alien shooter where you play as a Marine and a squad of Marines on multiplayer, and then you have to go around doing tasks in like a base, and slowly Marines are getting picked off, and like that's a really cool concept. An ambitious concept too, because it allows for emergent gameplay, but it also allows for emergent storytelling and a lot of replay value. But they didn't do that. They gave us something completely fucking different, which made me sad.
Now for the next man. This will turn more people.
Is it Squealy's favorite?
No, it's Bobby Kotick.
Oh! Now,
small image.
These are examples of like what firing could do, by the way. If you fire these people, things could improve. Now, go ahead, Squealy Billy and Choomba. Tell us about Bobby Kotick.
So, Bobby Kotick is the CEO of Blizzard. And I don't know if I have to tell Chatfish about all the terrible things that have happened at Blizzard or are still happening at Blizzard because of this man.
Yes. Blizzard Activision, don't forget.
Oh,
Blizzard Activision, yep.
Or Activision Blizzard. I don't
But the blame
care who gets top billing.
But the blame can be solely placed upon this man for a good most of the actual controversy regarding all of what's going on with them. Because he just refuses to do his goddamn job, or is too greedy-minded to actually do anything better for the company. The Great Satan.
The Great Satan. Can we talk about Richitello? We're gonna need a little bit of a breakdown of Richitello real quick. Examples of his work usually can fill in the blanks with that information. Richitello, go get Richitello. Maybe he's a good guy. George staring at me as he's like a rapist or something. It's just like a crime.
He's just really, really interested in you.
I don't.
Oh, Bobby? Yeah, this is Bobby seeing Chatfish. He's like, wow, they give you. So, Kibbs, you say these little guys right here, they give you donos? And they give you how much?
Oh, yes. He is the man who saved the player base of WoW from never leaving their PC. He made WoW bad. How can you imagine that?
Yes, this guy actually killed World of Warcraft, or basically led to its death.
For a good while. There's still people obsessed with the game, but Jesus Christ.
World of Warcraft's golden age ended because of this man.
It was the biggest game in the entire goddamn world, and he managed to fuck it up.
Yep. He actually did. I remember playing World of Warcraft in its heyday, and I remember when Bobby Kotick got involved, and I was like, I remember just slowly over time losing interest. And it was coincidentally due to a lot of decisions they made. I hate to say this, but these guys are not the worst. Chris Roberts might be the worst of them all, says Gunfox. That's the guy behind Freelancer and the guy behind Star Citizen.
Oh.
If memory serves.
Yeah, that face is familiar.
Let me read. There's a new image for Chris Roberts, by the way. I'll read off his Wikipedia early life.
Yep.
Roberts was born in Redwood City, California, to a British father and an American mother. Already starting off poor.
Wait, this picture you posted, is this guy? Gay?
Yeah.
That's Chris Roberts.
God, this is when he looks so much younger, because he's kind of fat now, if I remember right.
No, he looks pretty much the same.
Yeah, I'll
let's
post
see
another
here.
image.
Maybe a more up-to-date version of Chris Roberts. Do we find out who Riccicello is? John
Okay.
Riccitello. This is Italian, maybe.
Let me grab him.
But let's do the Chris one because we got him up. And this is a guy I actually know stuff about because of his work on Freelancer and his work on Star Citizen. Because I also
Wing
own
Commander
ships for
series.
Star Citizen. I was peer pressured by my friends with the FOMO effect. FOMO Chatfish, like yeah.
So- Chris Roberts is a game developer for like as late back as Ultima 5, going into fucking Wing Commander, then Strike Commander, then Wing Commander again for Starlancer and Freelancer as well, then Star Citizen, and now Squadron 42, which is not a real game as well.
I thought
First
Squadron
game
42 was
according
playable,
to-
wasn't it?
Google, he had a hand in was Striker's Run.
No, like all of this is still to be announced. It's not.
Oh my
It's not available yet.
None of these things are finished. Holy shit. Dude, if I had his resources, I would fucking cream so bad.
It seems the first game that he had a hand in making was in 1986. So
None of these
he's been
images
around.
they have.
He's
on
been in
fucking
the industry
people.
for a long time. He's part of the
Yes.
early wave. Is that him
None of
now?
these- No, that's John. That's John.
Okay. I'm like, damn, he looks very kind of different, honestly. Facial complexion as well.
No, it's a completely different person.
All right, so back to Chris while we're on him. Yeah, so So the big problem with Star Citizen is scary. It's scary because of what it almost did to crowdsourcing projects. It almost killed the ability for people like me to fund my project, because people look at like crowdsourcing projects. Because we're not so different, you and I. Because I too develop my funds and resources by crowdsourcing. However, where we do differ is I don't sell items in game because I don't like the idea of that. I think that's cringe. And I just stream and dance like a monkey to make money for my game. So that's where we differ. But
Very monkey-like.
yeah, pretty much. But he sells basically promises of what will be in the game and what ships and models you could have, but you have to pay an exorbitant fee to have these things. Like thousands of dollars or hundreds and hundreds of dollars to buy 3D models in a video game. This I find, like I don't even
Reprehensible.
like it's not even like it's like a different feeling than looking at Peter Molyneux or Todd Howard, right? Or even Hideo Kojima when he's being like a little bit arrogant or whatever. It's like a feeling of like, oh my god, like I almost can't believe it, honestly. It's just like, it's bad. It encompasses everything bad about it. And what terrifies me about it is that he gives crowdsourcing projects a incredibly bad reputation, which I feel like a lot of Kickstarter or crowdsourced projects will often get less support because people were burnt out by all the false promises of like these Kickstarter campaigns or crowdsource or forever projects, right? What I would compare and I would use as a counter argument to help people who are similar to me who are doing crowdsourced projects is citation of Project Zomboid. Project Zomboid is an example of an indie game that's crowdsourced, well, not necessarily crowdsourced, but it is basically ongoing development for well over a decade. But look at how far it's come. Look at how big it is. And then cite other games like Factorio or other games where they take incredibly long amounts of times to realize themselves, or Songs of Six and stuff like this. Just because they're slower development does not necessitate bad. Or Star Sector would be another excellent example. There is a case for these types of games being developed where it pays off massively. And it is worth doing. Massively so. But he is basically the antithesis of everything bad about the crowdsourcing methodology, if that makes sense. He's basically Satan. That's what I'm
He's Satan.
trying to say. He's basically
He's Satan. He's evil.
Chris Roberts is basically the Satan of indie projects because he scares people away because Star Citizen has become such a meme in terms of forever project. It's what honestly gives me nightmares.
Well, my game turned to a Star Citizen.
It's what I mean. I guess it acts as an incentivized motivator. That's why I stay up so late working on stuff. But like, goddamn, is all I have to say on that, man. Anyone that wants to add anything else to this guy?
Like, he's the single reason why a lot of people became poor recently. Well, semi-recently. It's been a couple of years.
He might be one of the best scam artists of our time.
Yes. The big problem with the Star Citizen thing is that it's also more cultish, right? Todd Howard, he scammed people, yes, but it's not as, like, culty and insular, though. Like, he takes criticism and critique. And yeah, he might ignore it, but he takes it. Chris Roberts is one of those cases where their entire community and their entire, like, thing is so insular that it has, like, an almost cultic vibe to it, if that makes sense. I don't think it's actually in a cult. I'm just saying it has that vibe.
A lot of those people are just heavily coping for the amount of money they spend.
That's a sunk cost fallacy investment now.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is this game's taken so long that it had to switch engines, right? When we made the choice and we had a massive ass meeting to switch engines, we did it purely because Unity told us we had to pay them money for every time our game was downloaded. And financially, I couldn't think of how I'd be able to afford developing our game anymore. And ever since they told me that, and even though they apologized and rescinded that, I don't trust them anymore. They burned that bridge, and that bridge can't be repaired. Transferring engines is not an easy deal, by the way. It's not something that I want to do either. So I think most studios don't want to do it. It's only if you have to, you know? Oh well, what can you say? Now, what's this fellow? This John Riccitello. The name sounds familiar.
Riccitello. Let me pull him up.
What is his work?
Career. Let's see here.
He looks like he has a big career because he looks old. So he's probably done a lot.
Oh, Unity. There you go. Riccitello became the CEO of Unity Technologies in late 2014, having previously consulted for and joined the technology company board in November 2013. During his tenure, he has overseen 2 fundraising rounds, raising $181 million in 2016 and $400 million in 2017. He has also worked to get Unity's game engine into Oculus software development kit. Riccitello has led efforts to develop the use of Unity software tools beyond gaming in industries such as automotive design, construction, and filmmaking. On the 23rd, Unity announced that Riccitello would be leaving the company amid controversy, appointing Jim Whitehurst as interim CEO and president.
I assume that was the controversy yeah, because this guy, if I remember
right,
right,
from EA.
Yeah, because if I remember right, this guy also, reputation-wise, worked on EA stuff. And if you look at his track record of the studios he leaves, he usually, like, drains it and then moves on to the next thing. Drains it. Because what was his tenure under EA? This is going to correlate things.
Let me drink. There you go.
What did he do?
Riccitello joined the video game company Electronic Arts in October 1997, initially as president and chief operator officer until 2004. He left the company to co-found and be a partner of Elevation Partners, a private equity firm specialized in entertainment and media business. Along with Roger McNamee and Bono Riccitello, returning to EA as CEO from February 2007 to March 2013. When the board of directors accepted his resignation because of the company's financial performance. Following EA, he worked as an advisor to startup companies and became an early investor in Oculus VR.
Ah, that's why he put Unity in there. It's part of his little plan.
Big plan.
Yeah, so basically he worked at EA, caused it issues, then left. then went to form another thing, caused issues, and then left again.
Mhm.
Then did you? Yep. Okay, so you can see what's happening. Draining the money, then leaving. Draining the money, then leaving. Draining the money, then leaving. Because what he's probably doing is he's not investing the money he's making back into the company. Because he invested the money into the Oculus stuff, which is not related to that other company, which means that he's divesting his investments for himself and not investing back in. He's taking out, but not putting in. Yeah, that's what he's doing. So this kind of behavior is bad because what it is, he's sucking something dry and investing it for his own personal gain, but leaving the thing he sucked dry like fucking like husky. It's left to recover on its own. So he's a parasite, if that's the case. Because the Oculus thing and then him doing that to Unity to try to build up the thing to get back more on his investments all connects that. It all makes sense. Parasite. Worse than a parasite. Yep. Because basically these people come in and this is not uncommon in the industry at all, by the way. And this is not just the gaming industry. It's other industries too. You get some executive who shows up, comes in, gets money, gets paid shit tons of money like a lot of these guys do. But most of these guys, and I mean most, do not invest back into the company that they're doing this to. The ones they're doing this to is what they're doing is they're divesting their investments into other companies to basically diversify their portfolio so that they get a chance to get some wins and make more money in the long run. While the company itself is actually being drained, and then as soon as it reaches a certain threshold where it's like the company realizes this or the board realizes this and is like, hey, asshole, what the fuck? Like, and it's like, oh, it's okay, I'll step down respectfully, and like, yeah, you better. And then he goes on to the next victim. Does it again. Next victim. Does it again. Next victim. Does it again. Wherever he goes, causing disaster in his wake. That's bad. That's genuinely a bad thing, and whenever this happens, this is bad. See, I always feel bad when there's like a human face there, and I'm like calling these people bad people. And I just don't, it just makes me feel bad because I don't want to say that, but it's like, that is bad.
This guy is a bad person.
Yeah.
Look at Bobby Collick's face, Kibbs. Is that
Yeah.
a face of a good person?
I know, but
That's a face you can't feel bad about.
maybe it's because I
saying mean things
empathize
too.
too much. But I like the idea of believing in humanity, and they fundamentally are causing me issues philosophically.
Look at his hands.
Well,
Look at his
people
hands.
are fundamentally
He just
self-centered.
sparks about hands.
Those are some evil hands. No normal person holds their hands like.
I don't like it. It upsets me greatly. Little snake oil salesman. Yeah,
I
pretty
bet
much.
Bucky holds his hands like that.
Oh my god! Whenever he's making a deal, are you telling me last night when he's like, "Yeah, kids play with the controller," he just does that?
You're telling me Bucky does the happy merchant meme?
All right, chat. Listen to me. Hear me out. We should get an art fund of Bucky Squirrel doing this.
as a happy merchant.
We should get a webcomic produced. Yeah, because next time if Kibb's choice. All right. Write this down. Kibb's choice put $0 in it, but I want to make Kibb's choice go towards a Bucky Bobby Kotick meme.
I thought Kid's choice was Secret Art Fund.
Oh fuck yeah, that's right. Well, okay, save that for later because it's good shit. We got to use that later. Add it to like later because Secret Art Fund.
Yeah,
comes
just
first.
put it there with no money in.
Yeah, no money and put 0 in there. Yes. Oh my god, genius. And the best part is he won't even know. Like this is gonna be our great plan.
Happy merchant Bucky.
Like just imagine his avatar, but like this. This is perfect. Bucky Kotick, yeah, pretty much.
I think fucking India would enjoy that one.
Oh god, I hate.
He definitely would.
Isn't Bobby a happy merchant? Oh, I'm sure he's happy. It's just most of the
look
people.
at him. Look at that smile.
He's
that
happy.
Genuine
The players
smile.
are. He's
Those
happy from all the
eyes
money
that
he's
just
making.
Stare into your soul.
God damn it, Chatfish. This is too goddamn funny. I do enjoy these podcasts so much. Mostly because I think we've established a good thing. I was always like, okay, I want these to be comfy. And I think we nailed the comfy vibe. I think we did it. I'm happy.
I actually have a question about
Don't ask me things. No, okay, go
this
ahead.
podcast specifically.
Hmm.
Why does the thumbnail say streamer tax?
I didn't upload the right thumbnail. Hold
But
on.
streamer tax works as too.
I'm fixing it. I'm fixing it. I have to do some maintenance to the stream. God damn it. Stream maintenance on stream. Unprofessional streamer. Unprofessional
You've always been
streamer.
that way, Gibbs.
I can't believe you're so unprofessional, regular.
Oh my god, Chad, it's over for me. I'm canceled. Oh my god. Oh, the only way to make me feel better is like
about you, kid.
God damn it, Bond introducing that
Where's
stupid
Bond? Let her
verbiage
know.
in the fucking community. It's all like fucking the twit longer. I remember when she explained to me what that fucking meant, and I'm just like, oh my god. The fact that there's like a communal phrase for that, a twit longer, is terrible. By the way, go ahead and explain what a twit longer is to chat, because they don't know.
Okay, it's a long version of a twit.
Twitter. Tweet.
Now,
I mean,
now-
tweet.
Yeah.
Bunch of twits. So Twitter is a shitty platform that makes it so that you can only type a couple sentences for your for a post. So what people do is that they'll write up a paragraph and then take a picture of that and then put that into the Twitter fucking box instead of writing up the actual paragraph.
Since when it was called Twitter, those were tweets. Now that it's X, what are they called?
It's still called twits. Twats even.
They're called X's, obviously.
X,
I sent an X.
You're an Xer.
I'm gonna X you.
No!
Now, Travis, how do you feel about that? Like, spiritually, of course. Like, spiritually, I feel conflicted.
Big ol'. No, don't come into it now. No way.
Wow. Veilguard in this stream overlay does so much more work than real Veilguard.
He does.
Of course, what you can't see is that package he's picking up and putting down is just on a conveyor belt that goes back to where it was.
He's
It's
simulating work.
cruel and unusual.
But like any good squealy, he's a lazy little deadbeat kitten. He's like, meep.
Yes, I'm so lazy.
There we go. Set that for that. And fixed, chat bros.
I don't
Fixed.
have a spirit, costs too much maintenance, says Tiberius.
Well, Tiberius will destroy you. He's like, no, my spirit is destroyed. Turned into a little husk. Turned into... You know, what else are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do, chatfishies?
I found you a path.
Tiberius, why is your icon the... that horrendous game?
Oh my god. See, when he joined this community, like, nobody told, like, we told him. He knows. I told him not to change it because it's part of his identity now. It's part of his identity now. It's a great reminder of pain and misery for me. It's a great reminder. God damn it, chat. Oh no! I just realized the Bunchcast is going into the year 2024. No. Okay, it's Bunchcast 2024. We'll have to fix that. That's okay. I'll have Chumba get back-end access and he'll fix that. Sure. Sure of it.
Yay, more work.
Chumba, 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 Chumba. You know what I mean?
Chumba says that, but he loves.
He does.
Can't stop doing it.
He's a little slave. Isn't that right? Sloomba.
Like,
I need to find out what who's in the HR department. I have some complaints.
Well, we don't have anybody, so get squealy.
remember the HR is Bubs. You know he does with all the complaints.
All right, Chatfish. Well, it's time for me to actually grab some lunch here, and we're going to start the next stream. The next stream is going to be Titanfall 2, followed by Call of Duty Ghosts. We're moving the Ghost event a bit further back because Bucky's not going to be here for a while, and so that way Bucky can actually be here for it, you know. So yeah, we're repositioning. So we'll see you in the Titanfall 2 stream, Chatfish. Thank you again for your generous Chatfish donations, and we will see you in a little bit. About like 15 minutes, because as promised, chat, I told you if you were ahead of schedule, I would buy cheeseburgers from Burger King. So I'm doing this to keep my obligation, and I'll get a little bit of fresh air, and I can also take out the garbage now. So see you guys in a few minutes. Take care, Chatfish, and have a great day.
See ya.
Have a good one.